Hello, this is the third part of Claws of a Lion by Neon Zangetsu. Link will be in the description. All author's notes have been removed between chapters. Also, any explicit NSFW scene will be removed. This part will cover the chapter 21 to 30. Monster! What is that thing? Row! Row, you fools! Row for your lives! Drown in your sorrow and fears! Choke on your blood and your tears! Bleed till you've run out of years! Give up your honor and faith. Live up your life as a wraith. Die in the blood where you bathe. We must do what it takes to survive. After all, we are the same, you and I. Tilda the Lion Unleashed. Night of Bones. Lyanna looked lovely. It was a relief to see, for until this very moment, Lord Rickard Stark had been concerned for his daughter, as any true father worth his salt would be. He had feared that she might suffer away from the north, that she would wither in the west, away from the cold and her people, but apparently his fears had been for naught. She stood strong and radiant and proud, veritably beaming beside Nathaniel in the war room as she helped him point out the enemy formation, that, and where they would intercept them. She did not cling to his arm as some mewling, lovelorn maiden might, but remained at her intended's side as an equal, meeting him eye for eye as they vigorously debated the nuances of some plan he didn't wholly understand. Hard to believe she'd all but lapped into his arms only a short while ago at the gate. Such was but a part of his reason for coming to Casterly Rock. Not only to personally check in on his daughter, but to ascertain Lord Lannister's intentions as well. That said, he'd brought the better part of 5,000 men west within. More than enough to repel the impending attack on Lannisport, beat back the raiders to the sea, then lay waste to the Iron Islands. It would not be a swift battle. He expected it to take time, perhaps a year. He'd also left a garrison behind at Winterfell, spread out should the worst come to pass. No matter his concerns, he could not entirely strip the north of all defences lest Aerys take it into his head to do something foolish, which he just might. One never knew with the mad dragon. Forewarned is forearmed and all that. It also gave him an opportunity to meet the Warden of the West face to face. He had heard tales of Tywin Lannister, exchanged letters with him, and shared correspondence in the past, but this was his first time meeting the man in the flesh. How best to describe him? Stern? Severe? Stoic? All those words seemed insufficient when meeting a monster of his caliber. This man had carved his family's legacy in gold and blood, and would for all the years he had left. But just as Tywin Lannister remained Warden of the West, so too was Rickard Stark Warden of the North. They were equals, if not necessarily in stature, then in rank, at the very least. He was not cowed by him any more than he would be a dangerous beast, but he acknowledged his presence nevertheless. As did Tywin himself, it seemed. Lord Stark. The older man granted him a grim nod, a curt acknowledgement between allies. We were not expecting you. He caught the question between the words. Why are you here? So that was how it would be then. Very well. He might disdain the realm's precious Game of Thrones as a whole, but he could play it well enough when pressed. Someone needed to lead the Northmen. He ran a hand across the map, tracing the image of Lannisport with one finger. And besides, I wish to ascertain the status of my daughter. If his words were just a touch frosty, none in the room dared comment. Your daughter is just fine. Lyanna huffed, preening just a little. Though she appreciates your presence. Was that a smile on Nathaniel's face? Or perhaps a trick of the light? They, at least, seemed glad to have him here. What's to be our plan of attack, then? Tywin's son and heir perked up, warming to the change as a lion with the sun. The Greyjoy fleet has taken its time reaching Lannisport, raiding up and down the coast wherever they wish. Nathaniel swept a hand across the map, indicating a score of finely carved pieces that served as ships. They think us unprepared. We are not. The key is to draw them in here, and then, once they've committed themselves, we'll spring a trap of our own. There he went with his schemes again, that clever boy of Tywin's. And that must be Cersei Lannister, standing silently at his other side, listening with rapt attention. A most comely young woman, one who knew how to use a blade, judging by the sword belt she wore. Perhaps Ned might like her. Benjen was still much too young, and besides, Brandon was far too smitten with that Tully girl of his. Would that he could cool his head. He might have brought him here to learn the ways of war, rather than secret him away in River Run. Wouldn't do for his heir to rush off and get himself killed. Unbidden, he found his gaze drawn back to Cersei Lannister. She was staring at him. The girl looked fierce. Yes, Ned might make a good match for her. Then again, did he truly want to wed two of his children to the Lannisters? Lyanna and Nathaniel go on well enough, but who was to say Ned and Cersei would? But he digressed. They were looking to him for an answer, to which he grimaced. My men are not skilled in naval warfare. It'll be difficult enough getting them into ships to burn the Iron Islands. They'll be useless in a pitched battle on the water. They needn't be, Nathaniel chimed. We'll have them waiting to entrap them on the shore with our forces after I drive them there with blast powder. Blast powder? His brow furrowed, but he didn't give voice to the words. And what manner of trap is this? Perhaps sensing his concern, Lord Tywin sighed. It doesn't involve your daughter if that is your fear. She is family. She'll not come to harm here. As though that explained everything in the blood world. An awful thought occurred to him just then. Have they already been wed? Cersei went red. Nathaniel choked on his wine. Lyanna absolutely sputtered. Father! No. With but a single word, Tywin Lannister brought silence and calm back to the room. Weddings are for times of peace. We are currently at war. He looked down to the map and offered a rare sigh of annoyance. I suspect we shall be at war for quite some time. Good. Tywin possessed more honor than he'd initially surmised. He hadn't thought the man might try something in his absence, but these were perilous times, and much blood would soon be shed. Not just with the Greyjoys, but the Targaryens as well, though that conflict would come afterwards. He wondered how large that little red dragon had grown since he'd seen him last. With the Starks and Lannisters working together, the Greyjoys wouldn't last the year. And then, with a little luck, the Targaryens would follow soon thereafter. He remembered asking Lyanna earlier, "He has treated you well?" Her face had gone rosy. Very well. His studied his daughter once more as the strategy session evolved into further plans and countermeasures against the Greyjoys. Lyanna offered a few ideas of her own, means that had many nodding and Nathaniel all but beaming with pride. Rickard was no stranger to love having loved her mother very dearly, and Lyanna looked to be very much in love. But for now, there were plans to make. He could put the fear of the old gods into the boy later. If there was a later. No! None of that! He could not afford to die, the North needed him. Steeling himself, he fixed Nathaniel with a quizzical look. Now what's this about blast powder? 0.0, 0.0. Stop pacing and go to sleep already. Easier said than done, he supposed. Saying the words aloud should have helped. If anything, they only made him all the more restless. Naruto exhaled heavily, hands clasped behind his back as he considered his bed. It called to him, yet he couldn't bring himself to rest. His mind was still whirling with fresh thoughts and schemes of plans that might yet go wrong, comrades that might die, and so much more. He had gathered all the resources he could, had allies aplenty, fortified defences, but there was still a chance something might go wrong. And he was left to contemplate it alone. Cersei had gone down to pray in the stone garden. Nymeria had wandered off, wanting a world with Elia. She'd said something about poisons. He didn't dare ask what the little, or not so little anymore, he supposed, Blackfire was up to. Something told him ignorance is bliss on that front, just this once. As for Lyanna, well, he didn't rightly know where she was. Speaking with her father, probably. Sleep would have been nice. At least then he could talk with Rhaella. It had been some time since he'd spoken with the rejuvenated queen. She was probably growing restless. Not for lack of trying on his part, he simply hadn't had uninterrupted sleep nor the chance to reach her in his dreams as of late. All the more reason to corner her and talk, the sooner the better. Did she know about the Greyjoys? And if so, why hadn't she warned him? Eris was seldom the subtle sort. There must be some trace, some sign he could trace back to the Mad King. And then what? Even through layers of rock and stone, Kurama's voice was still able to pierce his mind as no dagger could. She's not at fault for this. I know she isn't, he bit his thumb in mild consternation, but if we had some forewarning, we could have been better prepared. Crake Hall's been burned, and it's a miracle the raiders haven't made it to Cornfield yet. They're focused on us then, most likely, meaning they may know about me. It was a possibility, he supposed. They could hardly keep him and Shukaku safe forever. Sooner or later, someone was going to notice the dragons. And that was assuming he didn't take the other 7 under his proverbial wing. Could he sense them? Was it possible? He'd never thought to try, but then again, there had never been the need. Maybe he ought to try, but that presented a different sort of risk, because once he knew where they were, he'd feel compelled to seek them out, shelter them, save them. Someone knocked on the door, diverting his thoughts. He was grateful for the distraction, if only because he hadn't bothered to lock it. Clasping both hands behind his back, he straightened himself up, rose to his full towering height, and lifted his chin to speak. "Come." The door swung open. His eyes widened. "Liana? Now wasn't this a familiar sight?" The last time she'd visited him in the dead of night like this was way back in Winterfell. That hadn't been on the eve of battle, mind you, but he found himself drawing comparisons all the same. This time, she more little more than a thin white shift. The garment clung to her, hinting, tempting, drawing the eye. But why would she wear something like this unless... Oh. Oh! Oh, Tilda! She eased the door shut behind her and locked it for good measure. Leah, before he could finish, she stepped into him. Her mouth met his halfway, lips caging his. She kissed him slowly, sweetly, lips lingering over his own. "I had to see you," she murmured, pressing herself against him. "I will not be left behind." He almost smiled against her lips. "No one is leaving you behind." "No," she bridled, terribly cross. "Then why does it feel as though every lady in this castle has gotten a leg up on me as of late?" "Naruto saw the bait but didn't rise to it. Elia brought you a dragon. Nymeria is your blade. Meanwhile, Cersei is..." She looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "I don't want to talk about her. And that's to say nothing of your dragon queen." She'd figured that out, had she? He wasn't surprised. Lyanna had ever been the clever sort. "We've only exchanged letters." And dreams, he added silently, but that was one secret he wasn't willing to share just yet. "She provides me with insight. But what do I provide you?" Lyanna slapped a hand against her bosom with a cry. "What do I have?" Her plea floored him for a moment, then he rallied. "You were my first love." And it was true. Nymeria might have been his first ally, but he'd fallen for Lyanna before her. She'd won his heart with his wild ways, and while there would always be others, there could be no doubting his affections for this wild wolf girl who'd slashed and clawed and torn her way into his good graces. He cherished her truly. She'd become his bride, then his confidant, then the woman he wanted to marry. He adored her. That would never change, no matter what anyone said. Not your first time, though. She was clearly still sulking about Nymeria, he could tell, but he had her attention. "Do you really love me?" He cupped her cheek and pressed his forehead to hers. "What kind of question is that? Of course I love you. You know I do." She backed away from him suddenly and reached up to her shoulders. Naruto hissed out a breath. "Hold on a second." Lyanna most assuredly did not. "Prove it." .00.0, prove it. Lyanna dropped her dress. It pooled at her feet as she exposed herself to him fully. She'd not worn undergarments, baring her breasts to him and more, exposing herself fully to Nathaniel seemingly without a care in the world. A lie. In truth, she cared very much what he thought. Daring to step forward, she took a hold of his hands, leaned up, and kissed his neck. "Tell me you love me," she whispered, nuzzling him. "Tell me you want me." Nathaniel didn't falter, but he did sigh. "I do love you, and I want you very much so," he amended when she made to protest. "But now isn't a good time. Hells, this isn't a good idea in the first place." Lyanna nearly recoiled, stung. He was just looking after her, she knew. "I don't care. I'll drink moon tea." "Your bloody father's in the castle," she growled. "I don't care. We might be heard. I do not care." Taking a hold of his face with both hands, she dragged his visage down to hers. He allowed it, despite being several times stronger than she, and kissed her deeply. She held him there for a long moment, refusing to release him until she made herself and her feelings abundantly clear to the brash blonde before her. Quite suddenly, he responded to her not in actions, but deeds. She gasped a little when he returned her affections, then again now when his fingers delved past her stomach. Paused now. "Go on." She prodded him, face burning, forcing herself to vocalize what she felt deep within. "I want you to touch me." And he did. Nathaniel wasn't a virgin, she'd known that, but it became abundantly clear. His fingers danced over her body, caressing the nipples of her breasts, teasing a pleased sigh from her, then a moan now, as he traced trails of fire across her body. Her thoughts fizzled as he coaxed her body to new heights. Teased, tempted, tormented. Stop. Should stop. They must stop. Lyanna didn't want to stop. Why would she ever want to stop this? Being with him made her feel good and powerful and strong. How could something like this possibly be wrong? She pushed him back to the bed, climbed into his lap, planted herself atop him, then laid her palms across his chest. He could have flipped her over and perhaps she would let him later, but at present she was feeling selfish and wanted nothing more than his trousers off, followed by everything else soon thereafter. There was pain at first when they coupled. Liana grit her teeth against it, but in time it gave way to pleasure, and with that came sweet, carnal bliss. When her intended sat up, she demanded that he hold her against him, not with words, but action. Slowly, gradually, she began to move in his lap, grinding herself atop him with slow, rhythmic movements designed to delight and distract. Swallowing her pride and asking advice from Elia had proven a boon after all. For all her sass and snark, the Martell girl knew how to please a man. Surely owing her a favor wouldn't be so bad. Nathaniel kissed her neck, drawing her back to reality with a soft hum as she continued to grind her hips against his. She was neither mounting him, nor was he doing the same her, but rather they were caught somewhere between the two, delightfully devilish in their decadence. More. She wanted more. By the gods, she needed more. Some might call this foolish, that by bedding one another before they were indulging in darkness. She didn't care. Instead, she began to bounce in his lap, short, savage motions the better to hasten her own pleasure alongside his. Until finally, she came. Her body quivered with sweet release, once, twice, thrice as she sprawled against her lover, exhaustion overtaking them both soon thereafter. Sleep claimed her most quickly as Nathaniel held her in his arms. She snuggled into him with a smile, warm, safe, and loved. Sweet dreams came soon thereafter, blessed and pure. She was still dreaming when the slaughter began. 0.0. From the mist they came. Masked warriors bearing blue eyes and blonde hair, armed with sword and axe and spear alike, they strode across the water and waded into the fray with singular purpose. Notably, there were only 9 of them. No more, no less, 9. In a pitched battle, alone, they wouldn't have made much a difference, but here with the Krakens hemmed in by Lannister and Stark alike, they made all the difference in the world. Time and again they targeted enemy after enemy, seeking out the commanders and any whom the invaders might seek to rally behind. It was a slaughter. Whenever an Ironborn struck one such masked warrior, it turned to smoke, only for another to take its place. They fell upon the Greyjoys in a frenzy of steel. None survived. 0.0. Euron Greyjoy took one look at the landlocked slaughter before him and knew the battle was lost. Bit of a pity that he'd tried to warn his comrades. They hadn't listened. More fools they. Magic was at work here. He should know, given he was something of a practitioner in the arts himself. Doubtlessly they were blazing now. With his birth, the infamous glass candles had begun to burn anew. They had only grown brighter in the years since. Doubtlessly they were blazing now. After all, magic was a dangerous art. It wasn't something just anyone could learn at the drop of a hat. It required sacrifices, promise, power, blood. He could disembark from his ship, join the fray, perhaps make some manner of middling difference in the melee and die for his efforts. Or, perhaps, the water rippled below the boats as something stirred in the deep. It was Euron's only warning. Against his better judgment, he looked down. Something stared back at him from the deep with so very many eyes. He lost his hold on the rope with a hiss, the dingy splashed down, nearly throwing him overboard. Time to go. He'd expected some manner of magic, but nothing like this. His oars had only just touched the water when all hells broke loose. A teeming beast forged entirely of water burst from the depths with a sonorous roar, a wicked hydra bearing 6 horrid heads and great, glowing golden eyes besides. It towered over the Greyjoy ships, dwarfing them with its sheer size. Was it real? An illusion? Did it matter? The survivors on land were lucky. They faced a death of sword and steel. The cowards who kept to their slowly sinking ships, those who chose safety over combat, they met a far more gruesome fate. Euron's stomach sank. This went well beyond mere magic. He'd created this monstrosity out of nothing but water, and oh God, sure it comes! The Lannister lord waved a hand, and those long necks craned back at his command. Drown in your sorrow and fears! The water hydra descended, jaws ripping and tearing. Choke on your blood and your tears! Wood and flesh and steel crunched in their maws. Bleed till you've run out of years. Men screamed in utter horror. "Give up your honor and faith!" Blood flowed freely through the water. "Live up your life as a wraith!" Ships shattered like twigs. "Die in the blood where you bathe!" Death came for one and all. Was the boy singing? No, preposterous. And yet the words rang together, rhymed with eerie purpose as he issues commands to his watery beast. Another part of the scare tactic, no doubt, but it still terrified him. Worse, the water hydra ignored him. He was but one man among many ships, his dingy small beneath their interests. Aghast he watched the beast feast. His men died in droves. Some dared to fling themselves into the water and swim for shore. It didn't save them. Euron spared one last lingering look for his doomed men and rowed for his life. As he did, he cast a glance to Casterly Rock, looming large in the night. The risk was high, but the prize was probably going to get him killed, but the reward would be well worth it. The Greyjoys were finished. Maybe not this year or the next, possibly 3 if they were lucky, but it was only a matter of time now. Tywin Lannister would destroy them all, tear down their towers, salt the earth and leave their corpses for the crows. No matter how far east he went, the man would doggedly pursue. Lannisters paid their debts. Everyone knew the song. Inspired piece of work. That Rains of Castamere. His family would experience something similar, no doubt, despite the leave they'd been granted by the crown. If one could call it that. Ha! Do as the king bids, or join the lion in death. Except the lion wasn't going to die now, was he? The beast had a hold of the kraken now, had dragged it out the sea and onto land. No, the writing was on the wall now. He'd been blessed with a keen mind. It had served him well on raids, and when claiming his fair share of salt wives alongside a strong sword arm. But tonight, he knew strength wouldn't save him. Guile would. Wicked wit and cold cunning were one's only recourse when faced with such a beast. Victory had never been an option. They were sent here to die, and in doing so, provoke a war. How fortunate, then, that he'd come prepared for just such an eventuality. Euron plotted his course and started rowing. It wasn't easy. The tides were against him, and he knew he'd be seen on his approach. Guards shouted from above. He would be facing a wall of steel soon enough. A lesser man might have given up and rowed away, letting the current carry him away down the coast. Yet row he did, right to the mouth of the stone garden, and the cavern that opened to the sea within. Guards awaited him there at the dock, 10 men strong, more than enough to subdue and kill him. And standing at their head, a lovely young woman with long golden hair awaited him, clad in a red dress, her eyes a deep piercing green. This, then, must be Cersei Lannister. She didn't look particularly pleased to see him. Then again, that might have been the ring of Lannister guards with him, each armed to the teeth. Thought yourself bold, did you? She clasped both hands before herself and clicked her tongue at him in severe reproval. Did you think you weren't known to us, Euron Greyjoy? Ah, they'd been prepared for just such an eventuality then. The plot ran deeper than he thought. He'd been wise to come here after all. Not at all, my lady. He drew his sword for all to see, and threw it down at their feet. He was but one man, and no matter how skilled he might be, he couldn't possibly hope to best so many. I've come to bargain, he said, hoping the words might buy him the precious seconds he needed. Her brow furrowed. With what, exactly? The greatest gift of all. He swung back his cloak and revealed the prize in his satchel, snatched from a Braavosi vessel he'd raided not a year hence, deep and vibrantly blue. A dragon egg. Cersei went very still. Euron Greyjoy grinned, teeth flashing in the gloom. Do I have your attention now? She was watching him like a hawk. Good. He wouldn't been disappointed if she gave in easy. He saw no signs of dragons, but he could sense them, smell them in the chamber beyond. Somehow, some way, the Lannisters had discovered a way to hatch them. Or maybe it was that miracle boy of theirs. In the end, it mattered not. Regardless, the tide was turning. He was simply the first Greyjoy to see it. Why should he be loyal to the Targaryens anyway? The Mad King had father and his brothers dancing on strings. Euron danced to no one's tune but his own. The Lannister girl considered him for a long moment. And what's to stop us from killing you and taking that egg for ourselves? Ah, but he had also prepared for such an eventuality. I know the location of 2 more. Kill me, and you'll never find them. Cersei considered him for a long moment. And what would you ask in return? What to ask indeed? There were so very many things he could demand, each more appealing than the last. Had he more men, he could try and take these ladies captive, and their dragons with them. But no, Such a course would only see his ship swamped and him dragged down to the depths. And even should he manage to escape, he'd be hunted down like a dog and put to death. There was no sense in being greedy, not when it would spell the end of him. He would wait. He should be patient. He could bide his time. Lannisters paid their debts, and Greyjoys did not so. But Euron wasn't above sowing a little chaos. Revenge. Yes, he would start with revenge against Aerys. And from there, well, who knew what might happen during the chaos of war? Euron bit back a smile as he bowed deep and low. I wish to serve the winning side, only until he could inevitably take everything for himself, of course. Lannister fools, by hook or crook he would have it all. They knew not what awaited them. Then again, neither did he. 0.0.0. Naruto mowed down another screaming Ironborn with a roaring Rasengan, kicked a second aside, and obliterated a third with a vicious overhand swing of his sword. The blade did its duty and cut down the fleeing fool, but unused to such force, shattered in his grasp, leaving him clutching a broken hilt. Again. Worthless. Men were dying all around him, and he couldn't even find a proper blade to endure his strength. Annoyed, he tossed it away into the mad melee and waved a hand above his head. In response, the water dragon, Jutsu Hydra, he'd conjured lash out with all 6 of its heads mowing down a score more. There was no safety for the enemy here. Neither shore nor sea could save them. The Starks and Lannisters, we're going to notice his beautiful display. But so be it. Better for him to flex his skills here and save lives than to restrain the lion's share of his power. Taking the reprieve for what it was, he spared a glance for Casterly Rock. He'd never felt so alive, so fulfilled, so burning with power, and yet a faint, lingering sense of unease nagged at him. Love got a bad feeling about this. Chapter 22. I know what I saw. The boy made a dragon of water, he did. Then when the battle was done, he just started healing people. It's not right, I tell you. Ain't natural. We've the maesters for the sort of thing. Tilda. Healing hands. Interlude. The dawn heralded a magnificent massacre. Scores of Greyjoy dead lay strewn in the shallows and the land alike. Few, if any, had escaped to tell of the slaughter. The survivors, those who managed to surrender before Lord Rickard started lopping off heads left and right, were summarily rounded, questioned, then put to the sword. For Naruto's part, he was too tired to even savour the victory. It had been a long night and a longer morning thus far. He'd spent the better part of the last 10 hours wandering between the Lannister and Stark camps playing medic. That's right, a true blue healer, not one of those meddling maesters. Everywhere he went, he expended his chakra, mended wounds, restored lost eyes, patched up limbs, even growing a few back where he could. The latter drained him more than he cared to admit. Restoring a lost leg or an annihilated arm was far more difficult than simply bringing back an eye. And to be frank, he had little practice at it. His efforts were praised nonetheless. Each soul he healed was guaranteed to survive. Many more would have tales for their families when they returned. They'd be memorable if nothing else. Much to his chagrin, he began to amass something of a following among the Northmen. That much was to be expected, he supposed. There was no point in keeping his talents hidden anymore. Not that he could after last night's devastating display. The North were an honourable lot. They wouldn't go tattling on him, not after all the wounded he'd tended, not when they evidently thought him a herald of their old gods with his healing ways. But Aerys had spies everywhere outside of Casterly Rock, and there were doubtless some lurking in Lannisport. Word would get out sooner or later, if not of his abilities, then of the battle here. Even with the roads closed, it was only a matter of time. How much time remained to be seen? Weeks at the least, months or perhaps a year if they were lucky. Luke. Bah! He didn't believe in luck. Not anymore. He made his own. Still, in unleashing his talents last night, he'd broken the Greyjoys and minimised casualties on their sides. All in all, they'd only lost 50 men altogether, and most of those had perished or died of their wounds before he could get to them. Alas, some superstitious sods refused to be healed and perished because of it, but that couldn't be helped. Regardless, that left the bulk of their forces was largely intact, and more importantly, so was their fleet. Once the stragglers were rooted out of Crakehall and the rest of the West, they could turn their attention toward the Iron Islands. That would take time. Months. Maybe a year as well, though he hoped it wouldn't. He said as much when he made his report to Tywin in his tent. Good. Naruto's brow shot into his hair. Good. Wars are not won in a single night. Tywin didn't look up from scratching out his letters at the head of the table. No matter how much we might wish otherwise. Sealing the message, he passed it off to a nearby soldier and looked him square in the eye. Evidently, he didn't like what he found there, because his brow furrowed. You need to sleep. The mere mention of it nearly had him swaying on his feet and brought the migraine he'd been ignoring roaring back to the fore. His chakra reserves were large in this body, but they paled in comparison to those he'd developed as a shinobi. And he'd spent a great deal of them not only weaving jutsu about like a madman, but healing people. Still, his pride refused to allow him to simply collapse. Not here, not now, not when there was still so much to do. Fine, he muttered under his breath. I've still got a few hours in me. You are no, and you do not. His father stood, rounded the table and steered him into a chair. We will need your full focus for the battles to come, and we won't have it while you're working yourself to death. Besides, we have a prisoner. He claims to have valuable information for us. We'll need to question him before making our next move. An Ironborn? Kill him! He rolled his eyes. We have no need for... He gave your sister a dragon egg. His heart stilled. What? Tywin held up a furled piece of parchment. A raven arrived from her only an hour ago. Naruto fumbled for it, fingers trembling, shoulders shaking. He reeled, mind a whirl. The eggs are fake. Had to be, surely. He was itching to stretch his sense out toward Casterly Rock, but he couldn't with this infernal headache of his, as much as he might argue otherwise. He was well and truly tired. Perhaps. His lord father did not shrug. Such was unbecoming of him. But he did nod. He claims to know the location of two others. I'll leave that for you to ascertain. I can check right now. You may. When he sprang to his feet, Tywin pushed him back down into the chair. After you rest. Rest? There was no time for rest. He had so much to do and he was so behind. They needed to purge Crake Hall of the Greyjoys, make sure the raiders hadn't pierced into Cornfield yet, because House Swift wasn't at all prepared to deal with them, and then there was the matter of the egg and what it might mean. Tywin's stare didn't relent. Fine, he huffed. I'll sleep for an hour back at Casterly Rock. Happy? A stern glare from his father gave him pause. 4 hours. 3. 5. 2. 6. 9, Naruto shot back. Final offer. Tywin's smirk told him he'd been had, but it was too late to take back his words. Lannister paid their debts, but they also kept their promises. All right, he groused under his breath, conceding his defeat with a surly sigh. I'll rest for 9 hours, but not a minute more. Then I'm coming straight back. Good. Shall I post a guard at your door? No. He turned to go. Nathaniel. Irked, he paused at the threshold of the tent to look back at his sire. Tywin tilted his head a fraction of an inch to the right, regarding him intently. Have you bedded, Lyanna? Heat flooded his cheeks as he recalled the sordid events shortly before the Battle of Lannisport. Lyanna sat in his lap, arching her neck as he kissed her, gasping his name as she rode him. Lie! Lie now. Life for your life. What makes you say that? Cersei claimed the Stark girl wasn't feeling well. And? Tywin laughed, a sound rarer than a shooting stare. I've never known Lyanna Stark to be ill a day in her life. Fair. Be cautious, his father chided. This war is no place to raise a child. You think I don't know that? I'm well aware of what you do and don't know. His piece said, the Lannister Lord began writing another letter. You're my son. Now, be careful. You may have a dragon on the way for all we know. It wouldn't do to have a wolf as well. Nymeria. He was talking about Nymeria. Naruto sputtered. A joke? From Tywin? Was the world ending? He fled, his father's last lingering chuckle chasing him from the tent. Nymeria met him outside, brow raised. He scowled at her. What? Her smile was far too smug for his liking. A girl is proud of you. Not another word. No such luck. She was incorrigible. Shall she ride ahead and fluff your pillow for you? Oi? She ducked the retaliatory swipe and darted ahead of him. He let her go, too tired to give chase. Whatever she was up to, he'd deal with it when he was fully rested. Not before. In short order, he left and made his way back to the castle on his own. Returning proved easy enough. It was only a short ride up and the guards knew better than to question his presence. He fobbed them off with a brief tale of the Lannister and Starks triumphing over the Greyjoys before he stumbled his way up the steps and sought his chambers. Lyanna might still be resting for all he knew. The idea of sleeping beside her brought him some small solace. Her father was still down in Lannisport. No one would notice. And then he could figure out this egg nonsense. Surely someone hadn't given Cersei one, right? He rounded a corner and caught a flicker of motion in his peripherals. Someone clamped tan hands over his eyes before he could react, a sure sign of how tired he was. Guess who, Tilda? He blew out a sigh. I don't have time for games, Elia. Spoil sport. The Dornish princess huffed and released him, allowing him to see her face. For a moment, it looked like she might tackle him to the floor. But one look at his weary eyes and bloodied armor put paid to any teasing she may have given or any such lust she might have felt. You look terrible. Was the battle that bad? Not as such. She clicked her tongue. When was the last time you slept? He most didn't answer that for his own safety. Her eyes narrowed regardless. Come along then. She took him by the hand. Let's get you out of that armor, cleaned up, and into bed with your lady. We can speak when you're rested. She knew about Lyanna then. Blast it. He was too weary to argue, even less so when she ushered him into a side chamber. By the time she was finished with him and helped him dress, he was nearly asleep on his feet. I suppose I can't give you a bath like this, she tutted. A pity. I would have enjoyed it. Maybe later. She nuzzled her nose against his cheek in passing. I'll hold you that. Quietly, gracefully, she led him back to his chambers and to the bed, where his head immediately hit the pillow. The last thing he saw was Lyanna's sleeping form hogging all the blankets. She'd actually slept right through the battle. Such a lazy girl. Just before he passed out, he cast a quick jutsu and cast his consciousness outward. 0.0. There you are. Rhaella finally found Nathaniel in her dreams. Her relief was great, her joy inexpressible, her delight complete. Today was a most pleasant dream. He'd arranged a neat little hillock overlooking King's Landing for the two of them, sat beneath a lone tree provided for shade. He looked up at her approach, one hand on his knee, eyes sharp as razors, something she gave no thought to. And why should she? She'd done nothing wrong. Yet when she made to approach him, he shied away from her touch. Or had she? My love? Did you know about the Greyjoys? The sudden question caught her flat-footed. That they were coming? Oh dear. Nathaniel sounded angry. Rhaella raised her hands. There was nothing I could do. Aerys has been more paranoid than ever. I've been locked in my chambers for days. I had no way to reach you, and I couldn't find you in my dreams. You didn't write to me, she scowled at him. How could I? His cronies took away all ink and parchment from me. Does he know? No. She shook her head fervently, begging him to understand. He's done the same for all lords and ladies in the court. He's gone even more mad than before. He didn't answer that, causing her to grimace. It hurt her heart. He really did look quite cross with her. It felt like they'd taken several steps backwards. Damn it all, Aerys. What had he done this time? Steeling herself, she scooted closer to him, hip brushing his. Please, let me explain. Nathaniel exhaled slowly, heavily, and took her hand in his as he sat beside her. Start talking. Rhaella told him everything. Chapter 23. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 Tild. How the Greyjoy screams. Tilda, row your boat, Part 1. Naruto awoke feeling more rested than he had in years. His last lingering memory consisted of falling asleep, dreaming with Rhaella, listening to her story and the plea for forgiveness that followed. And he'd forgiven her eventually. How could he not? Once he was calm and no longer flush with the raging heat of battle, he became logical about a great many things. She held no part in the Greyjoy invasion and had tried to warn him beforehand, likely would have if Aerys hadn't taken her ink and parchment from her. His refusal to sleep for several days had only further complicated matters. In truth, it was a miracle the king hadn't already confined her to Maegor's holdfast and simply thrown away the key. He suspected Jaime had a part to play in that. He was likely keeping the rotten dragon distracted to the best of his ability. But as things stood, it was only a matter of time before events spiraled out of control. He had to get Rhaella and Jaime out of that castle, out of that keep, out, and soon. And he could. If he was being entirely honest with himself, it would be easy. Therein lie the problem. Infiltrating the Red Keep would be child's play given his unique skill set. Easier still if he brought Nymeria with him. Together, he was quite confident of their ability to slip into King's Landing undetected and reach Rhaella, but the second they spirited Jaime and the Queen away, Aerys would know the jig was up. And once he did, war. A war unlike any other, one the Lannisters and their allies weren't yet ready for. They would be seen as the villains. All of Westeros would turn against them, and he would have to kill them all. Innocent and guilty alike. Butcher men and women and children, like so much cattle. Kill so many that none would dare rise against him ever again. He didn't want to be a butcher. No, if House Lannister wanted to be seen as the heroes, the champions, the righteous cause, they had to wait and let things play out a little longer. Wait, prepare, and pounce the moment the Targaryens overstepped. And make no mistake, they would, sooner or later. Until then, he would abstain, for now. Still, it was tempting to try, if only to see the gobsmacked look on the king's pustule-ridden face. Closing his eyes, he leaned back into the pillow and allowed himself imagine the moment. "Hey, bastard! I took your woman. What you gonna do about it?" Thinking of that was better than sex. Of course, there were other options at hand. He could sneak into King's Landing and kill Aerys. The thought alone was even more tempting than rescuing Rhaella. His brow furrowed at the notion as he conjured up the scenario. He began entertaining thought exercises the better to keep his mind sharp. Let's say, for a moment, that he assassinated the Mad King. His rule wouldn't collapse. He had heirs. With the king's death, Rhaegar would take the reins of the kingdom. He knew very little about that man beyond the fact that he was well loved amongst the small folk of King's Landing. That, and he had an unnatural fixation with the North. Lord Rickard had made mention of the prince's visit to Winterfell, and all it entailed. Just thinking about it soured his stomach. Rhaegar wanted Lyanna. For what, he didn't know, but he wasn't going to get her. Not after what he'd said. Pay call on her, he said. He'd be paying for new teeth if he showed up at Casterly Rock and pulled a stunt like that. Lyanna was like to kick his head in long before anyone else did. Still, he hadn't told her yet. Better to spare his beloved that fear. Suppose he killed Rhaegar, then? Offed him alongside with Aerys. Who did that leave? Young Viserys, a boy who hadn't even seen 7 summers. A regent would be appointed in his stead, and it would likely be Aella, if she remained. Not that she would. The second she got her shapely little ass out the Red Keep, he doubted she'd go back willingly. In any case, the boy was an unknown, one unlikely to forgive the death of his kin or the absence of his mother. He could try leaving a disguised shadow clone behind, the better to guide him the way he wanted. But that, too, would be impossible for obvious reasons. He simply didn't know Viserys well enough to manipulate him, and he'd seen what a hateful child could do. Just ask Sasuke. In the end, there were simply too many variables to remove Aerys at the moment. Better the mad, diseased dragon he knew, and the realm hated, than the healthy upstart with an eye for northern beauties. Rhaella may be held captive, but she was far safer now than she would have otherwise been. Drugging the Mad King's meals had kept his hands off her for years now, to the point of him almost entirely forgetting her existence altogether. Thanks to that, there would be no little dragon growing in her belly, which was also to the good. Thanks to her revitalized youth, something her lunatic husband was too far gone to notice, and the rest of the court too scared to comment on. She was more than capable of fending him off should he dare press the issue. Not that he would or could anymore, for that matter, as Rhaella had informed him of the king's most recent malady. Apparently Aerys had lost quite a few bits these days. An arm, a leg, an eye, and now his shriveled sausage. Oh no! The travesty. Truly, it couldn't happened to a better guy. Such a pity. He and Rhaella might have been denied ravens for now, but they still had their little chats in their dreams, and learning about that little tidbit had him laughing for hours. Alas, one couldn't feel warm in a dream, not the way he did here in the waking world. He was curiously warm, come to think of it. Rather baffling, that last bit. Why was he so warm? He'd initially surmised the blankets were to blame on that front. But no, he'd basically gone to bed in his breeches, so that didn't make a lick of sense. Baffled, he rolled over and made to fluff his pillow. Someone groaned. Naruto froze, opened his eyes at last now, and forced himself to look up. He was still very much in his bed, yet as he raised his head, he realized his pillow wasn't a pillow at all, but a person. More aptly, perhaps, their bosom. Lyanna's, rather. Lady Stark had latched onto him like a limpet in her sleep, looping both arms around his waist while he slept, the better to cuddle. Unfortunately, or fortunately depending on one's point of view, that left her head resting against his shoulder and his face all but buried in her glorious valleys, which were rather comfortable all things considered, but he couldn't remember how he'd gotten here. She'd been sound asleep when he'd fallen into bed. When had she latched onto him? It didn't end there, either. Someone sighed sleepily behind him, and his eyes bulged in a singular moment of spectacular confusion as he realized someone was pressed up behind him, squashing their own breasts against his broad back. A tan arm draped itself almost lazily around his chest, and after a moment, he recognized its owner. Elia? The Martell princess mumbled something into his shoulders and snuggled closer, nuzzling her nose into his spine. He tried to dislodge and found it quite impossible. She had him impossibly pinned. Sandwiched between a sleeping Lyanna and Elia, he could do naught but sigh. They were the both of them, clad in naught but their nightgowns. Neither of them were wearing any clothes underneath. He could tell given how tightly they were pressed in against him. Attention! Naruto allowed himself a single incredulous moment of sheer disbelief, confusion, followed by resignation now as he lay back down. No way he was getting out of this unscathed. Forget about moving. He wasn't sure he could even roll over again without waking them. Unless... Nymeria! He hissed her name under his breath. You there? Someone moved in his peripheral vision. A girl is here. Belatedly, he realized she was sat at the foot of the bed, legs crossed beneath her as she observed the three of them. For a fleeting moment, he feared she might be jealous, or worse, downright murderous. In the end, he needn't have been so concerned at all. Her smile was inordinately smug. Any chance you could get me out of here? She shook her head. A man has made his bed, and a man must sleep in it. Traitor! His sworn shadow didn't budge. Lady Elia is concerned for your well-being. She is good and loyal and kind. You should reward her. Do for her as you did for me. What? He rolled his eyes with a snort. Bonk her brains out? Yes. You can't be serious. Master, a girl is quite serious. Smirking, the Blackfire leaned over the bed, kissed his cheek, hopped off the mattress, and sauntered out the room. As she did, he glimpsed the hound standing guard in the hall outside. Sandor turned his head, noticing Nymeria's approach, noticed him next, then saw the seemingly sordid scene within. His healed face twitched in a smirk. Lucky bugger. It wasn't what it looked like, really. Oi, Clegane, he hissed out an annoyed breath. A little help? Not a bloody chance, came the immediate reply. I like my bits where they are. Have fun, Tilda. Nymeria giggled once, waved a hand, and closed the door, sealing him inside. He heard a key turn in the lock and cursed softly. Damn. On the one hand, he was glad she was being more independent and thinking for herself. On the other, he really wasn't in the mood to deal with this right now. Lyanna he could deal with to an extent, so long as her father didn't find out they were sleeping together before marriage, but Elia was temptation incarnate. He was already towing a dangerous line with Nymeria, but there at least he had Tywin's tacit approval. Bedding a sly serpent atop a wild wolf was just asking for trouble, and that was to say nothing of Rhaella. The moment they met in the flesh, he knew things were going to happen. Loud things, noisy things, wild things. It felt like he was suffocating, steering a sinking ship, rowing the proverbial boat, bailing out water as he went, all the while trying to make it to a distant shore he could barely see. At this point, he was half tempted to let the damn thing sink and swim for it. All right. Enough. He needed to get up and was tired of tiptoeing around this. Reluctantly rolling over and away from Lyanna, he faced Elia and poked her in the cheek. To her credit, the Martell woke quickly. Her bright eyes fluttered open, blinked once, beheld him, then crinkled as she smiled. A hand came up to stroke his cheek, caressing him tenderly. Good morning, my lion. The words made his heart lurch, if only because he wasn't hers. Honestly, he didn't know what she saw in him. You need to stop doing this, Elia. Do I? She stretched both arms above her head, luxuriating in the ways his gaze raked over her. You seem to like it very much. He grabbed one of the seared arms and held it between them as a crude barrier of sorts. You're going to start something you aren't ready for. And what of you? She leaned in, pushing her hand against his collarbone. You may lay with Lyanna, but you're dreaming of a certain dragon queen. Shock shook him. For a moment he balked, confusing briefly breaking through his carefully crafted facade. How did you know? she smiled. You said her name in your sleep a great many times. I was awake to hear it. Lyanna was not. And that was all he'd share on the matter for now. They weren't ready to know the truth yet. That was a matter for another day. It matters not to me. Elia shimmied closer, bringing with her the warm scent of sunspear. She may have your dreams, but we'll have your heart. His brow furrowed. We? Lyanna's arms, still draped loosely around him, tightened abruptly. Her chin came down on his shoulder from behind, and belatedly he realized her face was red like roses. 7 shades of scarlet, really. She mumbled a good morning into his neck, and, almost unbidden, he felt a flush of warmth shoot through him. Not just from her body pressed against his, that was surely a part of it, but something else. Oh, she was awake? How long had she been? In the end, the answer was taken from him. Lyanna kissed his cheek. In the same moment, Elia crooned and kissed him full on the lips. His eyes widened and he leaned back, realization dawning. What in blazes did I miss while I was asleep? A great many things. The Princess of Sumpsia pinched his cheek. Lady Lyanna and I have come to an understanding. I don't mind being a mistress, so long as I can have you. Hells, I'll settle for being your paramour. Or your consort. She shrugged a shoulder almost as an afterthought. Whichever term you prefer. He said as much. Why me? Because I love you, silly oaf. She tossed her head, flinging dark hair over her shoulders once more. There is no other man I want. It is either you or none at all. Without you, I will die alone, unmourned, unloved by none other than my family. Is that what you want? No, but... He tried to crane his neck back, but Lyanna wasn't having it. She refused to let him look at her and kissed him again, lips tracing his jawline, followed his neck. He nearly broke her hold then and there, because he wanted to see her face, get a better read as to how she felt about all this. My name should be the only one you say in your sleep, Nathaniel. She sulked against him, pressing her face into his neck. First Nymeria, now her. It's not fair. Am I not enough for you? Her face was damp. He felt her tears. Kurama's presence abruptly intruded in his mind from the stone gardens below and jabbed him. Hard! Fix this! Now! Naruto blew out a breath. Wait, that's not it. I'll let you have Elia, Lyanna whispered. So please, don't run away with her. He put a stop to that right quick and whirled in her arms to take a hold of her visage, facing her fully. I'm not running anywhere, I promise. Her lips quivered. Swear it. I swear. He pressed his forehead to hers. Well, maybe to old Valyria at one point, but if I do, that'll be by myself. You'll know months in advance. Lyanna balked. Why would you ever want to go there? Reasons. She slapped his chest. Nathaniel! He embraced her. I'll tell you them someday, but for now, you'll have to trust me. She leaned into him. I do trust you. Just... He tilted his head. Just... She quivered in his arms. Don't let Rhaegar take me. Double damn. Her father must have mentioned the prince at some point. He'd hoped to spare her that pain. Seemed the dragon was out of that bag. I want. He placed a hand under her chin, lifted her gaze, and kissed her softly before pulling away. If he lays a hand on you, the hand comes off. She laughed weakly at his words and kissed him again, lips lingering for a moment. I'll hold you to that. That was one promise he would keep. Elia embraced him from behind before he could ponder the matter further, nuzzling his neck affectionately. Such bold words. You certainly don't lack for ambition, but I think that's enough talking, don't you? Let us focus on more pleasant things. He felt, rather than saw her look past him, her gaze searching. Unless Lady Stark has reconsidered. Lyanna spun Naruto around before he could think to react. Elia's gown hit him in the face a moment later. When he raised his hands to bat it aside, the now naked woman took a hold of his wrists and guided his palms up to her breasts, allowing him to cup them, hold them, knead them to the fullest extent. His hands were quick to betray him. Damn grasping fingers. In a matter of moments, he had the Martell princess gasping happily. Yes, that's the way. As she toyed with her, he felt Lyanna's hands ghost across his hips, find his breeches, and yank. He tried to look back, only to find her disrobed as well. Her lips caught his in a scalding kiss that obliterated any hope of resistance. He leaned into it without a second thought, but the moment he did, he felt Elia's nimble fingers dancing across his scars, tempting him, teasing him. Not one to be outdone, Lyanna took a hold of his right hand, guiding it down past her hips with intent, urging him onward. Elia's laughter rang in his ears, dark and heady, promising the greatest of pleasures. Enthusiastic, isn't she? She certainly doesn't lack for passion. So speaking, she slithered her way into his lap like her namesake and planted herself there, legs splayed on either side. Quietly now, she crooned, licking her lips. We wouldn't want to wake the servants. Tilting her head back, grin on her face, she began to ride him into oblivion. To be fair, by that point, he happily let Liana and Elia jump him. They didn't leave the room for 3 hours. Odds 0.0, 0.0. Now that he was rested, he had to confront Cersei. It was inevitable, he knew. No point putting it off. In all fairness, his sister didn't try to hide. He found her down in the stone garden wearing a red dress, clutching something to her chest. When she turned to face him, he knew Tywin's words, and those of a certain foul Greyjoy he needed to visit, rang true. Because she was holding it. A dragon egg. Another one? He couldn't quite contain his shout. Where did Euron even find that thing? Where was it even hiding? Cersei held tight to the blue-scaled object and clutched it to her bosom, wearing a sheepish expression. All's fair in love and war? Naruto palmed his face with an audible smack. Cersei, no. Cersei, yes. He held out a hand. Give it here. Now. She backed up quickly. Why? So you can hatch it. An alarm bell rang in the back of his head. So I can keep it safe. You know those things are dangerous. His elder sister took another step backward. No. He stalked after her. Wasn't asking. I said no. She shouted at him, startling him with her sudden vehemence. I have tried so hard and gotten so far. I have done my best to be good, to do what is right, even when it hurts me. But it's always you, isn't it, Nathaniel? You're the one hurting me. He slowed his stride, pausing. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. The venom in her voice appalled him. I know what the three of you did. He winced. I look at you now, and my heart hurts. She grasped one hand to her bosom. My breast aches. When I see you with other women, I want to strangle them, pluck out their eyes, and feed them to the crows. Something dark and ugly flashed across her face, hastily stomped down as she whirled away from him to conceal her visage. But I can't do that. Against his better judgment, he took the bait. And why's that? Because I promised. She rounded on him, tears in her eyes. Because I swore. I swore and swore and swore. And now that I finally have something of my own, you want to take that away from me too, why? Why do you hate me? Have I not been a good sister? I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end it doesn't even matter. And it hurts. She was openly weeping now, shaking where he stood. Why do you always hurt me, Nathaniel? He could feel Shukaku and Kurama's silent judgment as they watched from the shadows and hesitated. He didn't know how to react to this, let alone treat her at the moment. She was clutching the egg close to her breasts, yet his concern wasn't for that, but her own mental state. Cersei. He raised a hand slowly to placate her and dared a step forward. Just calm down. No! She snapped back. I'm tired of being calm. I want you to look at me. I want... The egg abruptly burst in her grasp, hatching all at once, showering her in shards. She gasped, but it was already too late. Something emerged, a little blue worm squeaking angrily at the both of them. Honestly, the two of you? So noisy. Naruto froze, eyes bulging wide. Was that? It was. It had two tails. Matabai. Chapter 24. We both want the same thing, you and I. Do we now? What might that be? Power. Tilda the Kraken and the Lion. Row your boat, part taparu. All the world held its breath. Cersei didn't dare move. Naruto balked. Achoo! Matatabi sneezed suddenly. It was ultimately that which broke the tableau between them. Cradled between Cersei's hands as she was, the sudden action unbalanced the little thing, forcing his sister to lurch forward and catch her lest she tumble out her hands and harm herself. Alas, that had him lunging to meet her just in case she dropped the poor thing, which in turn had his sister's face turning a bright cherry red, which she diverted by focusing on the hatchling in her hands. There, darling girl. Cersei crooned softly, clutching the reborn Bijou close to her chest. You're all right. Indeed I am. The hatchling clicked her jaws at her, producing an angry chirrup. No thanks to you. I would have preferred to sleep for another decade or two, but no, you just had to wake me up. Naruto snorted. Typical lazy cat, wanting to sleep in. Matatabi heard it and rounded on him, mismatching eyes ablaze like balefire. And you? Don't think I've forgotten your part in this. You just couldn't die peacefully, could you? She tried to flail her wings, but was still too weak to muster the muscle for it and managed an angry plume of smoke instead. Well, you had to drag the 9 of us with you into this reincarnation of yours. I hope you're happy, Cersei sniffled. Now you've offended her. Naruto's brow shot into his hair. How do you know she's a girl? Matatabi absolutely hissed. You would do well to retract that statement. See? Cersei preened and looked away from him. A lady always knows, Nathaniel. Great, now she was sulking. Sage save him from his sister. He didn't think he'd ever understand her. Come to think of it, Lyanna and Elia had baffled him lately as well, and Nymeria before that. Rhaella at least made some small semblance of sense. He had plenty of time to sound her out, first through letter, then dreams, and more. She wanted freedom, and had made her intentions toward abundantly clear over time. She didn't go and spring surprises on him like the other girls. Unwilling to dwell upon such matters, he looked back to Matatabi, still ensconced in Cersei's arms and not keen on leaving anytime soon. In terms of appearance, she was a different beast compared to Shukaku and Kurama. She had rich blue-on-black scales aplenty, but her face was strangely whiskered, practically feline with 2 mismatching glowing eyes of gold and green. Of course there were also 2 scaled tails, because of course there were. The universe just loved to mock him these days, didn't it? Tyrion would be delighted to meet another dragon. Doubtless he'd drag the Hound's little sister down here to meet them. What was her name again? Selene, wasn't it? He'd have to talk to Tywin about securing a match between those 2. Shukaku and Kurama clamoured over when he wasn't looking. Well, the former crawled, not yet trusting in his wings, while the latter flew, landing neatly upon his sister's shoulder for a better vantage. Cersei grimaced as his claws dug into her, not drawing blood, yet still painful, but didn't protest as he curled his 9-scaled tails around her arm for balance and leaned over to get a look at the newborn hatchling. Well, 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 look who joined the party. Matatabi craned her short neck up to glare daggers at him. But Kurama, I suppose it was too much to hope you wouldn't be here. And is that Shukaku? She cast a baleful look to the cavern floor where the paler dragon sat indulgently at Cersei's feet. You're even more pathetic as a dragon than you were as a tailed beast. The former tanuki reared back on his squat hind legs and made a sharp, strangled noise. She sneered at him, smug as her namesake. What's wrong? Cat got your tongue? I will burn you, you damn furball, Kurama chided him. Now, don't go picking on her just because she's just smaller than us. Naruto, of course, could hear every word. To Cersei, said words seemed the harmless chirping of baby dragons. Harmless, perhaps, but their claws were long and their teeth terribly sharp. She had an alarming view of both as they snapped at one another. She'd absolutely frozen where she stood, caught between the 3 of them. Reckless, not suicidal. Good to know. So, 3 dragons now. Great. Who was next? The 3-tailed Izobu? The 4 tails? Son Goku was a hell of a name, and he didn't exactly want to call a 4-tailed monkey dragon that. But Cersei had turned a pleading look upon him, and he'd best rescue her. She wanted to keep Matatabi, of course. Clicking his tongue, he held out his right arm. Kurama almost immediately accepted the invitation for what it was. In a single seamless bound, he leaped off Cersei's shoulder, beat his wings once for balance, and landed upon his outstretched leather-padded limb with remarkable alacrity. Steadying himself with his many tails, he tucked his wings in and settled in smoothly against his shoulders, curling around him like some scaled scarf. He'd nearly grown too big for that. Shukaku needed a nudge from his boot, but never one to be outdone, he scaled his leg quickly, climbed over Kurama, and claimed a perch atop his golden locks. Naruto flicked one eye up to glower at him. If you relieve yourself up there, I will end you. Relax, I ain't gonna do anything stupid, boss. Don't look at me, Matatabi scoffed. I'm quite comfortable having this human all to myself. Cersei marvelled at him, still clutching the little blue dragon in her arms. You're quite good with them, aren't you? He really was. And yet he still couldn't bear it, the awe in her eyes, the pride, that silent, unspoken longing. Well, not unspoken anymore, he supposed. Not after that last outburst. Naruto looked away from her, unable to meet her gaze. She made a pained noise behind him. Nathaniel? I don't hate you. He heard her inhale sharply as he uttered the words, but barreled on before she could interject. I just don't know what to do with you. And he didn't. He wasn't afraid of Cersei, and he certainly wasn't yielding to her, despite the fact that she was older than him. physically speaking. She confused the living daylights out of him. Or maybe she was the confused one here. In the absence of Robert's visits to Casterly Rock, and with everyone so wretchedly busy dealing with the Greyjoys, there was no one she could truly connect to. Tyrion was much younger than her and didn't understand, while he knew Mother and Father would never approve. Cersei didn't love him like that, he reasoned. She couldn't. His sister was just a little out of sorts at the moment. Yes, that was all, he told himself. She was just getting stir-crazy. Robert would be good for her, surely. Better than he'd ever be. Right? Kurama bit his ear, startling him terribly. Hey! He glared at his partner only to receive a glower in return. Why'd you go and bite me for? A wing buffeted his face, smacking him for good measure. You know damn well why. Shukaku blew out an annoyed breath. He's terrible at this, isn't he? Matatabi chortled in Cersei's arms. Truly he is. Off? He waved his hands furiously, causing Kurama to snatch up Shukaku and Scarpa and wheel back to the tree. After a moment, he heard the telltale clink of claws on stone, suggesting Matatabi had wriggled her way out of Cersei's arms to join her siblings, which in turn caused him to growl again. Fine, leave me to deal with her. Traitors, the lot of you. Silence stretched across the stone garden. Even then he didn't dare turn around. Cersei hiccuped. It was that sad little sound which undid him. He found himself pivoting almost without realizing it, only to find himself rooted by the tears in her eyes. She hadn't made even the slightest move toward him. On the contrary, she'd actually taken several steps backward, leaving her wringing her hands anxiously before him. Gods be good, she really was crying. Weeping even. He could see the tears running down her face clear as day. Why cry for him? He didn't deserve her tears. Did she truly care that much? Why? He grit his teeth, quietly incredulous. Why me? You know. She dared a step forward. Because I... Don't say it. He bit off the last word. Why not? She flung up her arms in a rare fit of pique. There's no one to hear us down here. None but the dragons, at any rate. Kurama chirped angrily from his perch in the tree. Much to our eternal chagrin. Naruto would have laughed if he didn't feel so miserable at the moment. Instead, he palmed his face. He took no pleasure in this, didn't enjoy putting Cersei through this pain any more than he did himself. But he didn't see any other path forward. There was, as the saying went, no way out, but through. Simply put, he genuinely didn't know how to respond without shattering her heart. This was his sister. A beautiful young woman, yes. That much he couldn't deny, but she was his own flesh and blood for crying out loud. Sister, sister, sister! By all rights and traditions, it was wrong. The Targaryens wed brother and sister for hundreds of years. One could certainly make that argument, yet they weren't Targaryens now, were they? They might share some distant blood with them. Genealogies were strange and anything was possible. There was no telling how far bloodlines went back from Aegon's time, but the excuse felt hollow, even to his own ears. But they needed to have this conversation, one way or another. They must. Else things would fester and rot between them even more than they already had. Cersei sniffled and firmed her lips. I'm not sorry for loving you. Clearly not. He sighed. She glared at him. Do you think this a game, Nathaniel? Is this all one big joke to you? Does my pain amuse you so? No. He chose his words warily, unwilling to provoke her further. Fine. Say your piece. Let's have this done. Her eyes didn't light up as he thought they might. If anything, his words seemed to sadden her. I've tried to be so hard to be good for your sake to hold it in. She clutched both arms close and embraced herself, forcing him to tear his gaze aside as the motion accentuated her bosom. I thought I could handle it, that I could be quiet, step aside, stomach silence for your sake. But I can't. Her green eyes rose, brimming with agony. I want to keep my vow. I have to keep my vow. But you're all moving on without me. And you. I spoke with you once already and you've said not a word about it since. What am I to do with that? He reached out for her. Cersei, let me speak. She snapped at him. You said I could. He crossed both arms before his chest and stood his ground, giving her permission. What am I to do? She raved at him, eyes wild and wide. Just hold my tongue and take it. Jaime's in the Kingsguard. Tyrion's smitten with that Clegane girl of his and you. She palmed her face and turned away. They're taking you away from me. If not the Stark girl, then that viper. You're not mine. You were never mine. And soon I won't even get to see your face. The air between them was charged. He could feel a spark lingering in the air like electricity. Westeros didn't have that. Another thing to improve. He was trying to distract himself again, wasn't he? He could tell her. He wasn't her brother, not really. By blood and flesh perhaps, but not soul. Whoever Nathaniel was meant to be, he'd usurped him the moment he was reincarnated into this world. Not that she'd ever believe that. None of them would. Not yet. Rhaella was the sole exception to the rule, with Nymeria understanding to a lesser extent. But Cersei, to tell her that might shatter her. So many secrets, so many spinning plates. Keep rowing your boat, bailing out water as you went before you sink. He had to keep up the act, because to falter was to fail, and to fail was to doom them all. Where did Cersei fit in all of this? Where could she? Where should she? You can talk now, if you wish. She granted him a small, sad, soft smile. I'm sorry for snapping at you. I'm ruining everything, aren't I? This is ugly of me. Downright hideous, really. You're not ugly, he bit back, surprising her as much as himself. You're beautiful, but you're also my sister. Her eyes lit up at that. So, if I wasn't your sister, this wouldn't be a problem. A curious turn of phrase, but one that deserved an answer. No? She was up to something. But what exactly? All right. She took a deep breath, exhaled, and seemed to draw some small semblance of strength from it. Right. Her head bobbed in a nod as she repeated herself. That's rather good to know. Really, it is. You don't know how much that means to me. If it makes you feel any better about this, I haven't seen you as my brother for quite some time now. Why did he have the distinct feeling he was missing something here? I don't want to push you or come on too strong. She was still bumbling, mumbling, stumbling over her words. I don't want to be too much for you, nor turn you away. What was he to say to that? What could he say? Lyanna and Elia might take issue with you butting in. I'll talk to them and secure their permission, I promise. She was babbling now, hand over her heart, eager to please. I swear on the old gods and the new, I won't steal you out from under them. There went another one of his concerns. She was doing a rather good job of dismantling those. But what about, if you're worried about mother and father, don't be. They won't learn of this. I'll be careful I swear it. Blast! She'd said it before he could. Her eyes watered. Say something, Nathani. Please. Don't look at me like that. When he didn't immediately respond, Cersei dared a step forward. Then another. Yet a third. He stood his ground and didn't budge. Running would avail him nothing. He realized that now. Best to face this head on, one way or another, even if he wasn't entirely certain what the outcome would be. He let Cersei get as close as she dared, then closer still, until he was staring down at her, awaiting her next plea. His tongue betrayed him. The Baratheon boy is interested in you. Robert? Cersei blinked once, briefly surprised before she shook her head. I don't want Robert, not the way I want you. She touched her hand to his cheek. I'll be whatever you want me to be. So long as I'm yours. Your mistress, your servant, your slave, he seized her wrist. Don't call yourself that! You're not a slave. Then what am I to you? She smacked his arm, drawing a grunt from him. When he didn't retaliate, she struck his chest with a balled fist, once, twice, thrice, flailing ineffectually at him as though he were the very walls of the stone garden itself. I'm angry and tired and restless, and sometimes I feel like I'm going mad. I wish that you'd chase me, or try to embrace me. For once I wish you'd just say— He pushed a finger against her lips, cutting her off. I do love you, you know. Cersei paused, desperate hope flickering in her teary eyes. You do? He drew her into his arms, tucked her head into his chest, and planted his chin atop her head, holding her close. But not in the way you want me to. She crumpled against him with a whimper, arms wrapping around his waist. Sometimes I hate that I fell in love with you. Her angry words were blunted by the armor of his heart. I know. Hate was an old friend. He'd grown all too accustomed to it. Could you try? She looked up at him, trying one last-ditch gambit. Just the once? His brow furrowed. We shouldn't. Just one kiss, then. They were well past anger and into the bargaining stage now. Please, that's all I ask. If you honestly feel nothing, then we can stop. It was a challenge. Backing down now would be tantamount to admitting weakness. She knew that. So did he. Yet there was no arrogance in her eyes, no cruelty, no demand, none of the angry arrogance he'd once come to expect of her. Just a silent plea to be held. To be loved. To be adored. To be happy. What would happen if he denied her this? Would she become an enemy? Or something worse? Her hands fisted in his tunic as she fought down a sob. I'll marry Robert if you feel nothing, I promise. I'll never get in your way ever again. I'll do everything and anything you ask of me. Just, may I have this? His sister planted both hands on his chest, stood on the very tips of her toes, leaned up and gently pressed her lips to his. He held her for a moment considering, waiting for something to spark. Anything. As far as kisses went, it was surprisingly soft and, oh dear, 0.0.0. Sometime later, Naruto staggered down to the cells, lips still tingling. This was wrong. He knew it, should know better, frankly. And yet it had felt rather pleasant. No. Focus! Bad Naruto! Shaking his head fiercely, he cast those thoughts back into the darkness where they belonged. He could deal with family matters later and sort this out then. For now, there was work to be done. Cersei had practically fled back up the steps in search of Lyanna and Elia. Not him. Down he went, into the darkness. He lengthened his stride in an attempt to escape his thoughts, devouring the distance between him and his destination, taking the stairs two at a time in his haste to reach the dungeons. To be fair, Casterly Rock had a very few of those and even less need of them these days. Most prisoners were either thrown into the seat to drown or simply beheaded outright. Lannister paid their debts, but they did not keep prisoners. Not unless they had need of them. Euron thought himself a clever monster. In making himself indispensable, he sought to bind himself to the Lannister cause, likely to betray them later. Naruto knew his type. The man was a user. Euron was already doomed. He just didn't realize it yet. Poor bastard. In short order, he found a sealed door guarded by no less than 5 men, each of whom saluted at the sight of him. Lord Lannister. The tallest of them thumped a fist against his breastplate. We've been expecting you. He cocked his head aside. The prisoner's in there, then? A brisk nod. He is. Leave us and await me at entrance. No one comes in or out. Understood. They obeyed without question, stomping up the steps. It saddened him a little. Good soldiers followed orders, and that was fine for the most part, but he'd appreciate a few more like Clegane, men who could think for themselves. Another matter for later, he supposed. Taking a moment to compose himself, he exhaled once, steeled his face into a cold mask of Lannister arrogance and unlocked the door. He was prepared for an attack, but it never came. Laughter greeted him instead. Euron Greyjoy awaited him on the other side of the room, chained to the wall. Both his arms and legs were likewise bound, held taut with little in the way of slack. Good. They weren't taking any chances with him. The captive cocked his head to the right and granted him a grey grin. The prince comes to visit me. Naruto blinked. I'm not a prince. Not yet, the raider countered. But you will be. He had a strange way of speaking. He wasn't sure he liked it. What do you want? Euron chuckled. It was a dry, raspy thing. Food and water would be nice, for starters. I'll see to it that you get some after our chat. Now talk. With a breathy sigh, the Kraken raised his gaze to regard him. I already told your sister what I want. To serve the winning side. And which side is that? He asked. Isn't it obvious? Euron gave his manacles a shake, insomuch as they allowed it. Yours. And after? I'm not concerned with after just yet. You're a sharp one. I'm sure you can figure it out. Cheeky bastard. He turned back toward the door. Let's see if some tools can't loosen your tongue. You can torture me if you like. Euron's voice carried over his shoulder. I won't talk. Of that I can assure you. His voice rang sincere. Surprising. Weren't all Greyjoys filthy cravens? Nerves of steel, He pivoted to face him, hands clasped behind his back. You'll find steel can be broken. Perhaps, but I'm made of stronger stuff. The man stuck out his tongue, briefly revealing an odd black mark tattooed there. By all means, break out the hammer and tongs. See what happens. For a moment, Naruto found himself reminded of what Danzo had done to Sai, but no, the mark was different, carved in eldritch lines he couldn't comprehend. What is that? Euron closed his mouth, but only for a moment. You're not the only one who knows a little bit of magic. I won't talk. Everyone talks sooner or later. Not me. He remained calm, unflappable even in the face of pain. Anything I may or may not know will die with me. Are you willing to take that risk? After all, you are so very fond of those eggs, Gak. His words were rendered a startled gurgling as Naruto seized him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. Careful now, his voice dropped to a low hum. I need the information you have. not the rest of you. I'm not above taking your limbs. We'll see how useful you are then. Ha! His captive sneered. I'd offer you a sister, but I don't have one. Naruto decked him again, breaking his nose. Struck a nerve, did I? Another hammer blow bruised his face and sent a tooth whistling to the floor. Euron kept laughing. Violent, aren't you? So willing to use force when that silver tongue of yours fails. He subsided with a sigh, grinning at him through bloody teeth. You would have made a fine Greyjoy. Shame you were born a lion, not a kraken. Some have all the luck. What did he know? Maybe he should kill him. Stop! Euron snapped at him before he could deliver the killing blow. If my life is extinguished, the eggs in my possession be destroyed. I've seen to it. His words rang true. He was telling the truth. Darn. Didn't stop him from decking him again. I have no desire to be your enemy. Even battered and bruised, the Kraken Lord retained his rough dignity. I only want what's mine. You'll take the crown soon enough, and I aim to be among your friends when you do. Bullshit. He decked him in the stomach, driving the air from his lungs. A wild cackle burst out of the raider. Oh, you might protest and make your excuses, but sooner or later you'll realize I'm right. The Targaryen are a dying breed. They don't deserve magic. They don't deserve dragons. They don't deserve to live. Frankly, you're doing the world a favor. Who better than you to rule? He kicked out, dislocating the man's shoulder. Euron grunted in pain, but proceeded apace. Think about it. Your father won't do it. He's too old, and he doesn't want the responsibility. Nor does your mother. Your Kingsguard, brother? No, not for him the ways of kings. He'd be much happier with a sword in his hand, playing the knight all his life. Your sister, perhaps, but we both know she doesn't have what it takes to rule. To say nothing of your not-so-little brother. A punch snapped his head to hit the side. So much anger! He tilted his head back, baring his throat to him. So much rage! You want to kill me, don't you? I can see it in your eyes. You want to break me, make me talk. Yet you can't. You have nothing by which to compel me. But that's all right. I'm going to help you anyway. Oomph. Another meaty punch sent his head reeling to the side. Euron spat blood upon the floor. Hit me all you like, it won't change anything. I've seen how this ends. With you, sitting on the Iron Throne. It's how you get there that's yet to be determined. Naruto recoiled. You're telling me you can see the future? Glimpses, came the retort. If I could see everything, why would I be here submitting myself to your tender mercies? He looked down and laughed at his sorry state. Well, not so tender. Out with the old and in with the new, I say. One of the shackles shattered suddenly, breaking like so much brittle rust. Naruto pivoted in an instant, arm coming up to block, and yet Euron didn't attack. He simply hung there, hanging loosely, grinning like a loon. Make no mistake, I'm here because I want to be. You help me and I help you. He offered him his hand in friendship. Do we have a deal? Naruto eyed it like a kraken's tentacle. You do realize that if you step a single toe out of line, I'll have to kill you. I certainly hope so. The Reaver tittered. I'd butcher anyone who dared to cross me. Remind to tell you about my crew sometime. My ship earned the name Silence for a reason. He was making a deal with the devil. He just knew it. Still better the devil you know than the one you didn't. Wasn't that the saying? He could, without a doubt, kill Euron if it came to a fight. No mystical magic or twisted words would prevent that. Hells, Nymeria could probably take him. Barring that, he could just drown the man and go hunting for the eggs on his own. But if Euron really did have two of them, you're already thinking about ways to kill me, I see. That's the fun of it, isn't it? Euron smirked. Come on, Lannister. He wiggled his palm at him. Shake my hand. Let's enjoy this little dance while it lasts. Naruto exhaled heavily and reached out. They shook hands. Chapter 25. I don't trust him. Naturally. I'd be disappointed if you did. As you said earlier, Euron Greyjoy has his uses, for the time being. Until he has expended said usefulness, we shall make use of his so-called talents and direct them at our enemies. Keep him close if you wish, but under heavy guard. Whatever his plan may be, we shall counter it. Although, if he truly wishes to prove himself loyal, throw him at his own men raiding the West. We'll see the truth of it then. If he cannot kill his former comrades, then he's too weak for our purposes. If he kills without remorse, then we will know the measure of him. Either way, he'll be distracted. On sea, krakens may well be dangerous, but on land, it is the lion that rules. Remember that, my son. Tilda, Nathaniel, and Tywin. Dreams of conquest, choice. Hail the father of dragons. Naruto buried his head in one hand and fought down a sigh as he grasped a goblet in the other with intent. Say that one more time and I will harm you, Oberyn. Nonsense! The young prince thumped him on the back. If anyone deserves praise after that display, it's you. He raised his own goblet high. To driving the Greyjoys back into the sea. He nursed a scowl in his wine. Not all of them. Ah, but you have that one watched by the hound, no? The Dornishman kicked one foot upon on the table with a laugh. I doubt he'll be making trouble for us anytime soon. He wouldn't, not after the deal they'd made. On the contrary, he'd proven himself most cooperative. Downright useful, really, occasional witty barb aside. Therein lie the problem. Reluctantly, Naruto raised his arm, reached out, and clanked his cup against Oberyn's own. He would find no salvation in wine tonight, much as he might wish to. They'd already thrown a massive feast to celebrate their victory at Lannisport, followed soon thereafter by a smaller, more private affair with those who were in the know. That had been, what, hours ago? He wasn't sure. Wine had a way of muddling one's thoughts, and he'd drunk more than his fair share tonight. Not enough to make himself drunk. He didn't think it was possible at this point. But just enough to lend his thoughts a pleasant afterglow, a distant haze that kept him from perseverating on more menial matters. Tywin, father, hadn't bothered to keep up with their drinking games for long and departed soon thereafter once it became clear they'd be at this all night. Tyrion had tried to stay up with them as best he could, bless his little heart, but at the end of the day he was just a boy. He'd folded hours ago, and Mother had carried him back to bed, leaving the two of them alone. Oberyn hadn't stopped teasing him since, naturally. What troubles you? Choosing a different avenue of attack, was he? Clever of him. He growled and made to drink, only to realize his goblet was empty. He remedied that and fixed Elia's brother with a stern glare. What makes you say that? Oberyn tutted. You have the look of a doomed man about you, Lannister. I know it well. Come now. It's just the two of us here. The ladies have long since retired for the night. You can tell me. He very much doubted Cersei had gone to bed just yet. He'd last seen her whispering something Lyanna's ear, something that left the Stark girl's face terribly red. Elia was clearly a bad influence on her, to say nothing of Nymeria. He didn't want to imagine what the four of them might get up to while he was in his cups, so he chose not to. I'm overwhelmed, he admitted it to him freely, frankly even. There, I said it. Happy now? The Martell laid his chin to rest upon one hand. How so? Plans for the coming battle? A blonde brow rose. You know it's not that. Ah. Oberyn's smile became a touch sharper, a tad more protective. I take it Elia made her move then. My dear sister was never one to back down from a challenge. Now it was his turn to flush for an altogether different reason. You could say that, but then again, Lyanna's very much the same. Oberyn caught the implicit meaning therein and boomed a laugh. Nathaniel! You sly dog! However did you pull that off? I didn't. He masked a rueful laugh in more wine. They made a deal while I was asleep. Ian and I see. Elia's brother did the courtesy of pouring him more wine, then some for himself before returning to his seat. Rather, I wish I did. Mysterious are the ways of women. Naruto glowered into his wine. I'll drink to that. As you should. Oberyn guffawed openly and downed another flagon for himself. You treat them well, I'll admit. My sister has nothing but praise for you as of late. He did his level best to be a good lover to them, really. He did. Ah, but that still left the matter Cersei. Cersei, Cersei, Cersei! There could be no more running from her, he supposed. He could hardly admit his issues and conflicting feelings to Oberyn on that front for fear of facing his confusion, or worst, his scorn. There were some things even the Dornish didn't do. No, this was a matter he must address on his own, come what may. Time to face the music there one way or another. If only he knew how. Wait, there was someone he could speak to about this. In hindsight, he should have known better. It wouldn't be that easy. 0.0. 0.0. I fail to see the problem here, Nathaniel. Yep, really should have known better. Rhaella Naruto Tilda, she sang back, using his tried and true name. We Targaryens have wed brother and sister together for years. It is our way. Why ever did you think I would object? Tonight's dream had become a pleasant jaunt on the beaches of Dragonstone, their bare feet warmed by the waves. Together they walked hand in hand, simply basking in one another's presence. Or so he had been, until she'd turned his argument on its head. She'd a tendency to do that, didn't she? I'm not a Targaryen, he pointed out. Who can say? She shrugged the cylinder expanse of a shoulder. The Conqueror's bloodline goes back further than any of us could hope to trace, and he was known to travel to the west a great deal. Smiling softly, she hid her lips behind one hand, doing nothing at all to contain her laughter. Regardless, I don't take issue with the matter of you having a mistress. Pulling ahead of him, she hummed and kicked at the surf, laughing but a little as it tickled her toes. Your heart is too big. I could never hope to hold it alone. Still my sister. Rhaella glanced back at him, violet eyes twinkling in the low light. And did not a great many clans of yours intermarry for generations back in your village, as you yourself told me? Dang, she had him there. Yes, well, if I did do, that with Cersei she wouldn't exactly be my first. Rhaella's gaze sharpened ever so slightly. Is that so? He told her the truth. How could he not? She'd been nothing if not honest with him. If nothing else, he owed her the same courtesy. By the end, her face was red, not at all from anger. A Stark? And a Martell? My, but you are greedy, aren't you? He mentioned Nymeria. Rhaella's brow shot into her hair. Well, competition breeds excellence, doesn't it? You're all right with this? I suppose I'll have to be. Her violet eyes sparked suddenly as a thought occurred to her. Unless you've been bedding them for quite some time and leading this old woman on. Old? Her? Not anymore. Not after he'd rejuvenated her. You barely look 20, you know. She whipped around and pinched his cheek. Naruto Uzumaki. Tell me the truth this instant! When did you start sleeping with them? Her outburst made him smile. He rather liked this fiery side of her. Recent. He said the word freely, having nothing to hide. She tweaked his cheek. How recent? As in less than 3 months. Her met her gaze unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Literally the other day in Lyanna and Ilia's case, and not by choice. Oh. A light flush touched Rhaella's cheeks. I suppose they ambushed you, didn't they? He coughed into a fist, remembering just how terribly forward each of them had been. Even Cersei with her most recent confession. And despite all this, you've not slept with your sister? No. She giggled, and for once it sounded almost girlish, further betraying her anxiety. You do realize you're tempting me, no? I have a mind to make my escape, ride to Casterly Rock, and pin you to your bed for a week. His face went scarlet. Ugh! You'd think he'd be used to blunt courtship by now. Rhaella outstripped them all by a country mile. Left unsaid was the fact that any attempt on her part to flee the capital would fail without his aid. He gave her hand a squeeze. Please don't try just yet. Why ever not? She was testing him. Despite her teasing tone, he could sense the burning question therein. I dare say you'd slaughter anyone in your way. I would, he replied, steadfast in his conviction. And every army sent after you, until nothing was left. I'd also be seen as the villain, and the whole world would turn against me. Her lovely face drained of all colour. She'd meant it as a jest. You're telling the truth, aren't you? Yes. He was weaker in this incarnation, sure, but only just. He could still outrun horses, crush stone in his bare hands, and command the very elements. And that was without Sage Mode, to say nothing of his shadow clones and more recent creations. Factor in 3 dragons, and he had the potential to burn not just Westeros, but Essos and the lands beyond. Well, she fanned her face with a hand. Now you're getting me all hot and bothered. It's only the fair I do the same to you, no? Now wait just a second. Too late, and she was much too close for him to escape in time. She laid a hand on his shoulder and leaned in. Her lisp brushed the outer lobe of his right ear as she spoke, delivering the softest kiss with every other word. I yearn for you, beloved. I wish to touch you, not in dreams, but in the waking world, to feel your lips on mine, your hands on my waist, to cry your very name to the heavens for all to hear. He shivered but a little as she pulled away. Was it possible to get riled up from words alone? If so, she'd succeeded. The fact that he restrained himself seemed to impress her greatly, because she dared to kiss his cheek. Such a gentleman. I maintain what I said, however. Straightening up, she lifted her chin ever so slightly, violet eyes catching the light of the setting sun to set her gaze ablaze. Those silly girls may have your body, but I had your mind and heart first. As such, I shall be your unforgettable first. He couldn't resist the chance to tease her. Even though you technically aren't? Even so, she huffed and stomped on his foot as they walked. Comfortable silence reigned between for a time. Alas, it simply couldn't last for long. The good things seldom did. There is something else you should know, Raella said suddenly, almost apropos of nothing, fingers tightening around his. Eris has been looking for dragon eggs. Naruto nearly missed a step and fell face first into the sand. Thankfully, his reflexes were just as sharp in a dream as they were in the real world, and he caught himself immediately. His blood, however, ran cold. Does he know? No. The youthful queen shook her head. He suspects nothing. If he had even the slightest inclination, he would have sacked Casterly Rock by now. Varus assured me has no such plans. Although, he didn't like that tone. Although, he may be using the Greyjoys to ascertain your capabilities, she continued, brow furrowed in thought as she pondered the matter further. You won't be able to hide them much longer, my love. Her hip brushed his, causing him to sigh but a little. They are growing, yes? Kurama is, and quickly, but he's still not large enough just yet. Shukaku hatched more recently, to say nothing of Matatabi. Her eyes lit up. You have 3 dragons now. Did I forget to mention that? Had he only mentioned Cersei to her? Yes. She gave him a firm shake, drawing another laugh from him. You most assuredly did. Calming herself, she raised their intertwined hands and gave his knuckles a quick kiss. How did that happen? He explained in blunt, if brisk terms. Do you believe there will be more? 6 more at least. Ah, your tailed friends, I take it. He nodded. Raella shivered. Goods be good. Mastering herself quickly, she shook her head. They may be small now, but I expect that won't remain the case for long. Dragons grow quickly in the company of others. Now it was his turn to quirk a brow her way, bemused. Been reading books on dragon lore, have you? She sniffed. Reading is all I can do these days. That and exercise. Foot meet mouth. I didn't mean to imply, quite all right. She leaned into him mid-step, taking the chance to pull him close for what it was. I know you didn't mean anything untoward by it. Absence makes the heart grow fonder in any case. It will make our grand reunion all the more sweeter, provided my so-called husband doesn't catch wind of us. He scoffed. Eris isn't that smart. The man's insane. Raella pinched his arm, drawing a grimace from him as she spoke. He may be so now, but he was brilliant once, and has little left to lose at present. You'd do well not to underestimate him. Fair point. Mad and diseased he may be, but that made him all the more unpredictable. He'd already sicked the Greyjoys on them, or turned a blind eye to their raids at the very least. Who knew what else the madman might be capable of, when provoked or pressed? He didn't want to find out. I would ask that you keep an eye on that Greyjoy, Raraella warned him. His kind have ever proven untrustworthy. And you keep an eye on Eris. She tutted and caressed his cheek. Let me worry about that doddering dragon. I am nothing if not subtle. Targaryens were most assuredly not subtle. Keep a knife on you at all times and keep Jaime close. He'll keep you safe. I will endeavour to do so. She released his hand. I suppose it's time to go then. It was. He wished it wasn't, but he couldn't keep sleeping like this. Her voice caught him as he turned to go. Nathaniel, wait. He paused. In an instant she was upon him, hands cupping his cheeks, forehead pressed to his. Her nose brushed his, lips close enough to kiss. Yet she didn't lean in. You've given me advice all this time, helped me, protected me, even when you had no reason to. Her voice was low, fervent yet strangely sad, tugging at his heartstrings. Allow me to impart some small wisdom unto you in return. Be honest with your sister, as I am honest with you. Look into her eyes, ask her every question you can consider and see what comes. If she loves you, then she does. If this is what a fledgling crush compelled by lust, then that is a different matter. Speak with her, be true with her, or you shall both live to regret it until the end of your days. Do not simply settle as I did, else you shall live a life of misery. She tapped him between the eyes. Now wake up. He did so, but only for a moment. No, 0.0, 0.0. Cersei opened her eyes with a start. All around her she found not the comforting confines of her room, but something else entirely. A forest? Why was she in a forest? It was a lovely one. Make no mistake, full of lush, lively greenery wherever she looked, but it wasn't home. Was she dreaming? She didn't remember ever seeing a place like this. What is this place? That's something of a long story. Circe pivoted, startled as a voice called out behind her. Nathaniel? For it was her brother, undoubtedly so, but he looked different somehow. Stronger, taller than before. His eyes were brighter. His body almost seemed to glow with golden light lit from within. He'd never looked quite so handsome as he did in this moment. Those odd marks on his cheeks, too. What was this? What manner of witchcraft could this be? He'd called this a dream, yet she was aware of it, so that must mean... Oh, Tilda! Right then. If this was a dream, she didn't want to wake up. Not now, not never ever. Sit. He instructed her, indicating a nearby patch of grass. We need to talk. Her heart promptly leapt into her throat and took up residence there. And yet, sweeter words had never been spoken. Circe sat instantly. Alt. 0.0. 0.0. Rhaegar Targaryen considered his options. This was a dangerous game he was playing, one with great risk. And yet, the greatest risks often brought the greatest rewards, did they not? If father would not take action and help him find a suitable bride, then he would take matters into his own hands. Steeling himself, he cracked the reins and spurred his steed forward. But as to where he rode, well, who can say? Chapter 26. Congratulations. You've managed to anger the one person whose rage you should fear the most. For what it's worth, you have my sympathy. I doubt your death will be painless. Tilda Tywin. All must choose. You're not my brother? Of course, that was the part she'd focus on. In body, yes, he hazarded with a sigh, but not my soul. Naruto exhaled heavily, closed his eyes, and pinched the bridge of his nose in an attempt to rally his thoughts. All around them, the dream flowed onward once more, the forest thriving with vibrant life as the last lingering bits of memory faded away like so much morning mist. Circe seemed a bit flummoxed by his response. He didn't blame her for her silence. After all, he hadn't simply told her his life's story, he'd just shown it. Every year, month, day, hour, minute and second he could remember, each leading up to this moment. He's not simply shown her his past, but linked her to it, her and his mind alike. She'd practically lived out his first life alongside him, then most of his second life besides. If it sounded like overkill, it was. But he had no choice. It was the only way to make the stubborn lioness truly understand where he was coming from. And in understanding, see. Unlike Rhaella, who was willing to believe him solely based on what he showed her, Circe was far more suspicious, naturally inclined toward paranoia. So he'd shown her everything. Yes, everything. Meaning she now knew about Rhaella. Circe pouted, hands folded in her lap where she sat. At least you haven't somehow slept with the Dragon Queen before me. Naruto blinked, briefly befuddled. How had she... Right? She was still in his head, wasn't she? Best remedy that! With a quick pulse of chakra, he cut the link between them, noticing her wince but allowed the dream to persist unabated. Circe pouted just a little at that. Why did you stop? I rather liked being able to hear your thoughts. You know why, he chided her sternly. I'm only used to having one person in my head. The fox, yes. Her smile was brilliant. Will I be able to understand Kurama now? He shrugged, not quite certain. What he'd done was unprecedented. He'd never really let anyone inside his head before. Not willingly, at least. It might allow her to comprehend what the Biju dragons were saying, rather than their excited and often angry squawks and chirpy noises. But that was a matter for another time. They still needed to address the Hyuga girl, Circe said suddenly apropos of nothing, waving a hand, unable to recall her name, still swimming in the memories he'd given her. She loved you, I think. Hyuga? Oh, right. There had been someone always staring at him, hadn't there? Many of his memories were worn down, some of them even half forgotten due to his second life. The human mind could only remember so much, but he vaguely recalled a girl with pale eyes who barely talked to him. He scoffed, quietly incredulous. Who, Hinata? Nah, no way. She was afraid of me, always getting red and fainting whenever I was around. Always looking away from me, too. Is that what you believe? Naturally. He second-guessed himself even as he said it. What makes you think I'm wrong? Circe smiled sadly. A lady always knows, and I know the look of unrequited love. All right, maybe she had a point there. But Hinata? With him? No way. He shook his head. I would have noticed if she had feelings for me. Her brow furrowed. You cannot be this dense. You've slept with 3 women. How did you not realize this? Hey now! He held up a hand to ward off her rant. I like to think I've gotten a little smarter since my first life, you know. Clearly not enough if you didn't realize you were breaking the lovesick girl's heart. Love! Had Hinata ever said something like that? No way. He would have remembered. He pressed a finger to his forehead, trying to recall something. Anything. Eventually, a murky memory surfaced, worn and faded by time and years gone by. I love you. She'd said those words to him. Right before pain drove an iron stake through her heart. He'd gone berserk shortly afterward, given into Kurama, nearly gone insane. How could he have forgotten something like that? Hadn't he held her hand after Neji died too? How did I forget? Stop! It was the past. Focusing on it would only bring him pain. Hells! It was causing him pain now. Enough. He slashed a hand through the air. I'm being honest with you. The least you can do is spare me your games. Games? He expected scornful laughter, what he often got from her when they were children. Instead, she shook her head and sighed. Nathaniel, I'm telling you this, dear brother, because I had to practically beat you about the head to get my feelings across. Clearly that girl missed out. I have no such intentions. Right then, moment of truth. And those intentions are? She blinked and scooted a little closer to him. I had thought that rather obvious. He didn't budge, even when she laid her head against his shoulder. If mother and father find out, they'll be livid. Circe looked up at him, blinking through her long lashes. Not if you become king. He rolled his eyes. So everyone seems to be telling me as of late. Think about it. She took a hold of his hand, fingers stroking his. When you depose Eris and hold the crown, your word will be truth and law. You have dragons. All of Westeros will bow to you. You'll be able to do as you please, when you please, with whom you please. Glancing down at their intertwined hands, he struggled to decipher the tangled knot of emotions in his chest. But I don't have a crown right now. You will. She nuzzled his shoulder, breath hitching a little. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but soon. You were meant for this. It was his decision then. She was placing the onus of choice upon him. As if that made things any easier. Do you love me? The question seemed to puzzle Circe. She pursed her lips and said as much. What kind of question is that? Of course I do. No. He took her by the shoulders and her at arm's length. Do you love me? Not as a brother, but as a young man. Circe went very still. When she finally spoke, her voice was terribly quiet. Are you rejecting me? She looked so small, so hurt, so sad. He stood his ground. I'm not doing anything, and I won't, until you give me your answer. She stared sullenly into her lap and exasperated, he changed tact. How about this then? Is it love or lust that you feel for me? That got a better reaction out of her. I want to be with you. But why? He pressed. Why? She smacked his arm, indignant. Why shouldn't I? Must I spell it out for you? Because you're everything I want to be. Because you have power. Because you make the world bend to your will and to the hells with the consequences. Because I've come to adore you and regret my mistakes. Because I want to be with you and have your... Her throat closed, choking her words off in a sob, but he could guess the rest. Circe wanted children. His children. With him. That complicated things. It wasn't just mindless lust then. She had moon tea for that. But the idea of bringing a life into this world, or raising a little one, well, that didn't stem from lust at all. Why was love so complicated? I think this is love. Circe palmed her face, demanding his attention as she muttered to herself. Is this what that Hyuga girl felt? Poor thing. If only she'd been bolder. She peeked out between her fingers, giving him a sheepish little smile. Then again, if she had, you likely wouldn't be here. Her loss, I suppose. The thought alarmed him. He liked this life. Had grown quite fond of it, really. He had friends here. Family. He was building towards something grand, an achievement to which his old life couldn't possibly compare. Hokage of a village, you say? Pah! What was that compared to the king of a continent? Because that would be his fate if things continued down this path. Loath though he was to admit it, sooner or later Eris would trip up, do something stupid, and start a war against them. Once they had righteous cause. Do you love me? Clever girl, distracting him and turning his own question against him. He considered his not-sister for a long moment. You're not as annoying as you once were. Nathaniel! Sorry, it really was fun to tease her. In all honestly, I find you frustrating, demanding, and a bit of a bossy bitch at times." Her shoulders slumped and her head with them. It looked like she might burst into tears. But Cersei whipped around so fast that, were this the waking world, she surely would have given herself whiplash, perhaps even broken her neck outright. "I think I want you after all," he admitted, watching her eyes widen ever so slightly. "The current you. The honest you. I find myself thinking about you even when I know I shouldn't. Even now there's a part of me that wants to pin you to a bed and ruin you, because you look so damn delectable." Oops. Been a while since he was that crass. Cersei shivered a little, and judging by the red in her face, it wasn't at all in a bad way. "The future, you don't have to plot and scheme and backstab to get my attention." Reaching out, he took her free hand in his. "Just talk to me, all right? We're family. I'll listen to you. If you have complaints, voice them. Don't go blowing a gasket because you think I'm ignoring you. I'm not." She blinked. "Gasket? Term from my world. You wouldn't get it." She pressed her forehead to his, sniffling but a little. "Fool of a brother. You ran away from me before. Who's to say you won't again?" "I promise I won't, not without talking to you. Here." He waved a hand and made the dream twist, banishing the lively forest and replacing it with something altogether far more familiar. His bedroom. Cersei saw the bed at once and stiffened, eyes flicking to his, then to the bed, back to him. "Now, we'll start slow," he reassured her. "That's why we're having this conversation here, where we can't cause any trouble. Consider this a test run." She blinked, baffled by the terminology. "What does that mean? You're using all these strange terms." "Consider it practice." "Oh." Her eyes widened and her face went red as the full meaning of his words sank into her like a ship's anchor. "Oh, then that means there will be rules," he warned her quickly. "Not guidelines, actual rules. Do you understand?" Her head bobbed. "We'll need to act normal in public," he continued. "We can't give anything away. Lyanna and the ladies already know how I feel, and I trust them to silence. Not the rest of Casterly Rock. Am I clear?" Another nod, quicker than the last. "I may be able to manage a temporary disguise for us if you're that determined to go out in public." "How so?" He casually used a transformation jutsu before her, assuming the likeness of an old friend before changing back. Cersei made a curious noise trapped somewhere between a giddy giggle and a triumphant cry. "I'd like that. I can be patient. I'll be good." Naruto sighed. "The things we do for the ones we love. I know I'm asking a lot of you, yet this is the price. If we're caught right now, we'll risk destabilizing everything. Not just the alliance we've built, but our cause. In the future, things will be different. People can wag their tongues and gossip all they like once we're in power. Until then," she was smiling now, almost girlishly. "We," he huffed. "Don't read into it." "You said we Tilda." Naruto stood and drew his sassy sister up with him, unwilling to give her any more rope to hang him with. Here at last, Cersei looked toward the bed and hesitated. "It hurts the first time, doesn't it?" "This is a dream." "It won't if you don't let it. Nothing that happens here alters reality." Not unless he allowed it, of course, but he'd not say that. "You're not that powerful, then." "Oi, sister of mine." Still she dithered. Patiently he took Cersei by the hand and led her back to the bed. She allowed it, looking very much like an anxious lioness as she sat beside him, ready to maul him if he spooked her. This was the real her. None of that brilliant bravado or false confidence she put on in public. Alone, with no fear of prying eyes or discovery. Not poisoned by paranoia or fear or simply too much wine. Just the two of them. She could be herself. "He liked it." Cersei. Her head snapped up, but she didn't speak. She absolutely didn't dare, if only for fear of saying something untowards and upsetting him or worse, turning him against her. Not that she could. He touched one hand to her cheek, laid the other against her face and gently, carefully steered her lips to his. Their kiss was different than last time. Here in the dream, he was the one to initiate it, willingly letting his lips linger over hers, drawing a little noise from her, only to draw away. She whined unhappily, but he didn't give her the chance to protest and instead began lavishing kisses upon her face, then her chin, followed by her neck. Soon enough, that whine became a gasp, a groan, a moan now, as he delved lower still, exciting her further. He'd only just reached her breasts when she came alive in his arms. She all but launched herself into his lap, practically tackling him in her haste to get at him. She one leg around his waist as her fingers bit into his back, and suddenly it was his turn to gasp in surprise. All right, maybe he'd teased her a little too much. Using her own body as leverage, she dragged his face back to hers, kissing him hungrily, which he reciprocated with equal desire. It felt good to cut loose, to stop holding back, to hear her gasping his name, begging him to touch her, to get her out of this dress already before she tore it clean off. His fingers found the lacing of her dress first and undid it nimbly, leaving it to pool down her waist, baring her breasts to him. Immodesty didn't stop her. She hiked up her skirts with one hand and fumbled for his trousers with the other. Somewhere between the ripping of fabric, she wound up atop him, all but sitting into his lap. For all her fervour, she was inexperienced in this. He wasn't. Not anymore. The outcome was never in question. They both went mad. Carnal bliss. 2.0, 0.0. Circe awoke come the dawn, untouched, feeling more rest than she had in years. Also somewhat sore. Mildly concerning that. It was as if he had been here, and her very bad, ravaging her. Yet he was nowhere to be seen. She could still feel his lingering touches, his kisses driving her mad, yet physically she was quite untouched. Mentally, however, it was bliss. Every touch, every caress, everything, really. Circe revelled in it, glad to be awake for perhaps the first time in her life. She had been hesitant at first, anxiety getting the better of her over-desire. But in time, fear had given way to delight, and pain had become pleasure. So many positions, so much time. While their bodies slept, their minds were as one, their very spirits intertwined. They had explored every inch of another in their dream, leaving the waking world none the wiser. Even now she recalled the sheer carnal depravity of it all. Sitting in his lap, straddling him, crying out in bliss as he took from behind, it was, perhaps, a pale imitation to doing the deed in the waking world, but she could see the necessity of it. This would slake her thirst for the time being. After all, if they were discovered before he became king, there would be a scandal. Even when he did take the Iron Throne, she'd make certain he did. Tongues would wag at the idea of him betting your sister. To say nothing of his other paramours. Perhaps this was selfish of her. Perhaps she should let him go. Perhaps she was the one in the wrong here. But she had already given up so much. She had given him one last chance to walk away, and he had refused. She couldn't deny herself here anymore. Jamie was lucky. He got to swear his oath of chastity. Forget all about any desires. She was not so fortunate. While he was off riding about being a knight, she preferred far more carnal pleasures. She enjoyed Nathaniel's company, but was that lust? Or was it love? In the end, she didn't have an answer. Time would tell. She smiled despite herself, already longing for the next dream. A slow, sleepy smile tugged at her full lips. She absolutely lounged in bed all day, and time marched every onward. 0.0, 0.0. The Greyjoy raiders never stood a chance. From Cornwall to Crakehall, they were set upon, one and all. Within the span of a few months, they were driven from the west and cast back into the sea. And once they were, ships sailed toward the Iron Islands. It would be a massacre. But for whom? Chapter 27. You want me to lead the assault? I do. It will be your first military command. I trust you won't disappoint me. Who knows? If you perform well enough, the bards may have a new song or two by the end of this campaign. The Greyjoys will know we are coming. I expect they will have fortified Old Wick and Pike against us by now. It will be a hard-fought battle, on land and sea alike. But we have allies of our own on that front. The Greyjoys have irked both the Harlaws and the Mallisters with their incessant warmongering. I expect both will be glad to be rid of them, given the right leverage. Great, no pressure. How many men are we throwing at this? Why ask questions you already know the answer to? That many, huh? All right, let's begin. Tilda, father and son, a fine song. The Iron Islands beckoned. Naruto took no pleasure in the assault that was to come, if only because he knew there would be casualties. Men would lose their lives. Good men, honourable men, from both the north and the west alike. There would be deaths. There could be no avoiding that. For all his skills and healing, he couldn't be everywhere at once. He could come close, sure, but he wasn't perfect. Even he couldn't cure death. Worse, the Ironborn knew they were coming. No avoiding that either, given that they'd all but thrown them back into the sea. They had to know what was coming for them by now. Even a blind man could see the writing on the wall. They'd likely fortified themselves and dug in for a costly siege. Alas, the dragons weren't ready for combat. Well, Kurama might manage a flight with him through sheer dogged determination at nothing else, but Shukaku and Matatabi were still woefully small, given how recently they'd hatched. He gave them chakra every day to speed along their growth, but there could be no denying the former fox was growing the quickest out of all of them. Perhaps it had something to do with their bond, or maybe dragons just thrived during war. Who could say? Regardless, they couldn't afford to reveal them just yet, not with so much on the line. He soon found himself faced with another surprise. Tywin was staying behind. "You want me to lead the assault?" "I do." His father remained implacable as ever where he stood behind the table, much to his chagrin. "You've proven yourself in battle, and the men trust you. This will be your first military command without my guidance. I trust you won't disappoint me." This was to be their final strategy session before he set out then. "Sure." "Grit!" No pressure. Gulp. "Who knows?" The elder Lannister loosed a harrowing chuckle. "If you acquit yourself well, the bards may have a new song or two by the end of this campaign." "No, thank you. The Rains of Castamere was quite enough." "They didn't need a new song. The Greyjoys will know you're coming." His lord father laid a hand against the map, indicating a series of marked positions, forcing him to follow his gaze. "I expect they will have fortified Old Wick and Pike against us by now. It will be a hard-fought battle, on land and sea alike. But we have gained new allies of our own." He traced a stern finger past the Iron Islands, tracing the edge of the bay itself. "The Greyjoys are alone with few allies. Moreover, they've irked both the Harlaws and the Mallisters with their incessant warmongering. I expect both will be glad to be rid of them, given the right leverage." A blonde brow quirked. "Leverage you've already applied, no doubt." "I may have written a few letters." The other rose to join it. "What did you offer them?" Tywin stared stoically. "Victory. What else?" "Damn, Dad was scary." "Great, no pressure." He ran a hand through his hair, considered the pieces arrayed before them with a sigh. "How many men are we throwing at this?" Tywin tutted. "Why ask questions you already know the answer to?" "More that many, huh? All right, let's begin." Iron Man's Bay is not so impenetrable as the Ironborn would have us believe. It is vulnerable here, and here. Tywin indicated several points of interest, each of which he committed to memory. "A blockade would be wise, but we haven't the numbers for it. Moreover, the Ironborn are reavers and raiders. Their sailors outstrip ours. You must strike fast and strike hard. Take them by surprise before they can react. I suspect that wily Greyjoy of yours may have a few ideas." Just thinking about Euron left a sour taste in his mouth. Slimy Kraken had made himself useful. Too useful, some might say. "Euron mentioned a few," he admitted ruefully, tracing a finger over the map. "None of which I like." "Tell me of them then." He did, shortly and succinctly, feeling filthy afterward. Tywin didn't judge him for it. I see. "I'd ask you to keep it clean, but clean ways don't win wars." Grimacing, he took a goblet from the table and drank. Damn. It was only water. He would have preferred wine. "On that, we both agree." "Good. You're learning." Honor was all well and good to a point, until it got you killed. The Starks had yet to learn that lesson. Perhaps they would in the future. Lord Rickard had proven himself flexible when it came to protecting Lyanna. With a bit of luck, his bannermen would learn to bend as well, preferably before they broke. "Tell me," his Lord Father asked suddenly, apropos of nothing, "can that faceless woman of yours swim?" This time he couldn't quite hide his smile. "Nymeria can, and very well at that." "Can she now?" "She couldn't before." "When did she learn?" Heat rose to his cheeks. "I taught her. Sex on the beach was great and all, but going at it in the water had a pleasure all its own." Tywin noticed, sharp-eyed as ever. Just be careful you don't get a bastard of her just yet. Although, perhaps the Lannisters could do with a Brand family." Naruto nearly choked on his wine and had to thump his chest just to swallow. "Excuse me?" "Calm yourself," Tywin chided him. "We've more work to do before the night is done. Your voyage begins tomorrow. Or have you forgotten?" Joy of joys. The Lord of Casterly Rock tapped a finger down on the map once more, indicating the Greyjoy stronghold therein. Quellon is by far the wisest of the Greyjoys, strong and fast at that. He was peaceful and cautious, and wanted neutrality. A pity what's become of him, really. "How so?" Tywin fixed him with a stern look. There was a time when he wished to reform the Ironborn to make them a proper Westerosi house. He was in talks with me of it, and I entertained his offers. The resources of the Iron Islands would have been a great boon to us. Cersei might have been shipped off there. Father had never mentioned it. What happened? He suspected the answer, but his father merely confirmed it. Eris. After a moment's pause, he shrugged. Or perhaps Quellon has been usurped by one of his sons. He had a great many of them. Had implied he no longer did. Dare I ask what became of them? Euron joined us. Tywin counted off his fingers while he spoke, downing one after the other. Aeron was slain during the Battle of Lannisport. Only Victarion and Balon remain, and I suspect it is the latter who leads the Greyjoys now. Slay them, and the Kraken will flounder. Naturally, there's the risk that this is Quellon's doing, and he's leading us into a trap. True, forewarned is forearmed after all. He didn't like the idea of wiping out a house and tearing down their towers, but there could be no denying the Greyjoys started this. Whether they were pushed, goaded, threatened, or coerced, it mattered not. They were enemies. The blood of the West ran gold, and gold burned red hot. He'd drown them in it. Lannisters paid their debts, one way or another. 0.0, 0.0, Rhaegar kept riding. His destination was in sight. Silently, he prayed that this would go well. 0.0, 0.0. Something stirred in the depths of the ocean. Old and ancient, it awoke. 0.0, 0.0. Euron froze in the act of sharpening his sword, the steel slipping from his grasp as a vision took him in its teeth. Keen senses sharpened by magic whispered in his ear a dire warning of what was to come. A wry smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, carefully concealed behind one hand. Opening his eyes, he stooped low, retrieved his weapon and began anew. Now, isn't this interesting? 0.0, 0.0. The dawn broke, and with it came bittersweet farewells. Must you go? Naruto stood on the docks and peered down at Tyrion, fighting back a wistful smile at his little brothers, pleading. You know I can't stay. Ah, but he was a child, and children, as he knew, weren't so easily dissuaded. Nymeria's going with you, said faceless woman was already aboard the ship, awaiting him, no doubt rolling her eyes. Nymeria can fight. Tyrion was positively distraught to see him go, but he couldn't possibly go with them. Neither could Cersei. She understood that. Tyrion didn't. You're taking the Hound. Because the Hound can also fight, better than most at that. Elia and Lyanna also need to stay here as well. No one knows they're at Casterly Rock. He knelt down and embraced his brother before he could think to protest again, holding him close to whisper into his ear. I'm leaving the dragons in your care while I'm away. Can I trust you with them? Tyrion's gaze lit up. I'll keep them safe. You have my word. He rose to his feet, idly tussling his hair as he went. I know you will. He'd left countermeasures behind in the even that someone tried anything, but anything that boosted poor Tyrion's confidence was a boon in his eyes. After all this time, he'd become many things, but foolish wasn't one of them. Eris, if he was truly behind this, might try to strike at Casterly Rock while he was away. He'd talked long and loudly with Kurama and Shukaku as to how they might prevent this, with Matatabi offering her own input. If a dragon came calling unlikely, he'd be in for a nasty surprise. Elia stepped to him, hands clasped before her, claiming his attention. You will return, I trust. He quirked a brow at her. You doubt me? She took his hands in hers and squeezed. Never. Cersei sidled up next to him and kissed his cheek briskly, as a sibling might. Be safe, little brother. I could say the same of you. Keep up those sword lessons of yours while I'm gone. Her smile was radiant. Perhaps I'll be able to beat you by the time you return. He very much doubted that, but there was no harm in humouring her. Last, but by no means least, Lyanna stepped up. He saw the spark in her eye and knew at once that she was up to something, if not necessarily what. He soon had his answer as she took him by the face and kissed him fiercely, deeply, passionately, nearly causing him to stumble off the dock entirely and fall into the water before he caught himself. Many a Northman and Westerlander cheered from the ships. His face went red and turned redder still as Lyanna's lips brushed the outer lobe of his ear. Come back to me, she whispered. I'll see you in your dreams. Wait, how did she know about Joanna Lannister was next, taking him briefly into her arms to hold him tight? Be safe, my darling boy. He sighed against her. Mother, I'm not a child anymore. Even so, stop coddling him. Tywin was much too stern for such overt displays of affection, but he did clasp a hand to his shoulder. Save travels. Joanna elbowed him viciously in the ribs until he capitulated and gave him a firm embrace. From someone like Tywin, it meant the world. Of course, that meant Tyrion had to latch onto his leg, which gave Cersei an excuse to wriggle into his side. He basked in the warm, familial moment, wishing it would never end. All too soon, it did. "Don't worry, my lords and ladies," Euron swaggered up, arms swinging at his sides. "He'll be just fine. I'll make sure of that." Everyone glared at him. Not that he could blame them. The Greyjoy had proven himself trustworthy thus far, worryingly so. There had been no tricks, no traps, neither twists nor turns. He'd been a veritable paragon of loyalty and virtue, everything a Greyjoy wasn't. And now here he was, promising to protect him. Just what was he up to? Cersei hissed. "If you harm a hair on his head," Euron chortled softly. "Perish the thought." There was nothing more to be said. With one last lingering look and a goodbye, he grabbed Euron by the arm and dragged him away. From there, they boarded the flagship, and in a matter of moments, they were off. The invasion began. 0.0, 0.0, movement, ships approaching. It sensed them in the deep. Something called to it, hunger, prey, food, 4.0, 0.0. They made good time toward the Iron Islands, better than he'd ever dared to dream possible. With the wind in their sails and the sea calm, it promised to be a peaceful voyage. Rather concerning that, in his experience, there was no such thing as a peaceful voyage, impending invasion or otherwise. The Northmen wouldn't be of much use on the water. Most soldiers weren't, all the more reason to land and disembark quickly. Armour meant naught against the sea. Their journey needed to be a brisk one, quick and efficient, to strike at the very heart of the enemy before all was lost. A day passed in quiet solitude, with naught but the salt of the sea for company. A second swept by in relative peace as well as the spider pod of dolphins. By the time a third came, he found himself growing restless. Even with their vessel at the head of the fleet and no cover on the open ocean, he still expected an ambush. Any moment now, they'd see sails on the horizon, or some recently tamed dragon. Sage knew there were enough eggs about, would come swooping down from the clouds to burn their fleet to ashes. When no such threats appeared and no madness manifested, he only found himself further on edge. Euron didn't help matters any with that smug smile of his and the constant assurances of all will be well. Easy for him to say. He couldn't tell whether he was being his usual smarmy self or if he genuinely believed that. Something shook the ship, causing him to lurch forward. What in the world? Impossible. There were no reefs this far out, and the Iron Islands, though visible on the horizon, were still well away. So what then? Euron hummed thoughtfully, carefully bracing himself against the mast. "You may want to look down." A pang of dread seized him. Reluctantly he did as the man suggested and gazed into the briny deep. Movement danced in the depths below, too fast for him to properly see. He thought he saw a shadow, a rippling of water that had nothing at all to do with ears. He blinked, scrubbing at his eyes with both hands. Between one blink and another, the giant eye of a creature stared back through the water. "Nar!" Naruto recoiled, recovered now, as recognition dawned. Wait, he knew that one of the sailors saw it, shrieked, and stabbed down with their spear. "Sea serpent! Kill it!" Naruto swore. "No, you idiot! Wait!" Too late, the lance skittered off the beast's scaly brow. A low, sonorous noise shook the world. And that, as they say, was that. The water erupted. Tywin had been right about one thing. What followed would make for a fine song indeed. Chapter 28, there I was, watching that foul beastie rise from the deep. "And the Lion of Lannister faced it, lads!" He raised his fist, he did. And so he spoke. Tilda. The lion and the serpent, the seas boiled. A great churning of waves sent the ships rolling, their keels groaning like wounded beasts beneath the fury of the storm. Salt spray lashed the faces of sailors who dared to watch from their decks, their eyes wide with awe and terror. The air reeked of brine and sweat, of desperation and something darker, the scent of dread, thick and cloying. Above, the sky had been clear mere moments before, but the heavens themselves recoiled at the presence of the thing beneath the waves. A howling wind tore through the fleet, bending masts and snapping banners like brittle twigs. Clouds black as a smith's forge churned overhead, drawn forth as if by some unseen hand, a cosmic herald to the beast that now rose from the abyss, a leviathan. A terror of the deep, spoken of in old sailors' songs and half-whispered tales around drunken hearths. A dragon, but not one of fire and sky. This was a dragon of the abyss, a being of water and shadow, monstrous in its girth and eldritch in its power. 3 colossal tails lashed through the churning sea, each one thick as the masts of a warship, sending geysers of seawater skyward like liquid pillars of doom. Its shell, the colour of aged bronze, was encrusted with barnacles, pitted and scarred by countless battles fought in the blackened depths. Each crack, each jagged imperfection upon its hide, spoke of its long reign beneath the waves. Its maw, a yawning abyss lined with jagged tusks, gaped wide, glistening, gluttonous, the abyss given form. It loosed a roar that sent tremors through the air, rattling the bones of every man, drowning out the screams of sailors who clutched their weapons and prayed to gods who had long since turned their faces away. And there, upon its armoured back, clinging to the ridges of its spine like some defiant insect before a storm, stood Nathaniel Lannister. The fleets of Stark and Lannister bobbed like driftwood in the maelstrom of the beast's fury. Soldiers and sailors alike stood frozen, their hands gripping ropes and rails with white-knuckled terror. Some muttered prayers to the Seven, to the old gods, to anything that might hear them in this hour of madness. Others merely watched, their tongues locked in mute horror, their minds unable to grasp the insanity unfolding before them. Even Euron Greyjoy, mad captain of the Silence, stood at the prow of his dread warship, his ever-present smirk wavering. His sea-blue eyes, filled with the hunger of a man who had courted death and danced with monsters, gleamed with something close to reverence. He alone did not quail before the beast. No, he grinned, the way only a man utterly lost to reason could. He saw divinity where others saw doom. And in the heart of the storm, moving with the reckless grace of a man who had long since cast aside fear, Naruto stood unbowed. The Leviathan bucked, twisting its immense form, sending torrents of seawater crashing in every direction. The heavens themselves recoiled from its might. Yet he alone held fast. His fingers, bloodied from the effort, clutched at the armoured ridges of its shell, holding it back. His golden hair, slick with salt and spray, clung to his forehead, but his eyes burned with a fire that even the storm could not quench. His free hand reached forward, not for a weapon, not for a lifeline, but for the beast's eye, a massive crimson orb the size of a cathedral bell. It was not the eye of some mindless beast. It was ancient, deep, a window into something vast and terrible, an intelligence that had slumbered for eons, waiting, watching. And in that moment, as that great, terrible eye locked onto him, the Lannister lord did not look away. He met its gaze unflinching, unafraid, a mortal staring into the abyss itself. And the abyss stared back. Something passed between them, unseen and unknowable to the men who clung to their ships, watching in breathless dread. It was not a thing of words or gestures, not even of thought, but something deeper, a current, not of water, but of will. It was old, older than the winds that screamed through the sails, older than the waves that had battered stone into sand. A vast and terrible memory, stretching beyond the reckoning of men, beyond the rise of kings and the fall of empires. The beast hesitated. The titanic tails which had battered against the sea with relentless fury slowed. The water stilled. The storm itself seemed to waver, the winds faltering as if holding their breath. Its roar, once a call of defiance and wrath, became something lower, something searching. Naruto's lips parted, and though no mortal could hear him over the howling gale, the dragon did. I know you. Not words, not speech, something greater, a recognition that spanned the depths of time. The great beast exhaled, a warm mist rolling over the sea like the breath of a god. The rage in its massive crimson eye dimmed, shifting, changing. The mindless wrath of the abyss gave way to something far more terrible, understanding. Then, with a final world-shaking surge, the Leviathan plunged. It twisted, a mountain of muscle and scale crashing beneath the waves in a cataclysm of foam and fury, and as it went, it dragged Naruto Lannister down to the depths with it. A cry went up from the fleet, a single gasping exclamation of horror, then another, then more shouts of disbelief and despair, voices straining against the deafening silence that followed. For long, breathless moments there was nothing. No beast, no champion. Only the sea, wild and angry, churning with the remnants of what had been. Great whirlpools spun in the Leviathan's wake, drinking the sky in their endless hunger. The waters thrashed, churned, whirled in a mighty maelstrom as the duo did battle beneath the waves. And then, silence. A silence so deep, so unnatural that it seemed to press upon the world itself. Even the wind, once howling, now dared not speak. Nymeria stared into the depths, watching, waiting, praying. 0.0. Funny thing about holding your breath. It sounds easier in the stories, not so in practice. Naruto realized it the moment he hit the water. He'd sucked in a reflexive breath when his Sobu dragged him under, but he knew at once that it wouldn't be enough to last him, not in waters like this. Almost immediately, the pressure of the depths ground at him, tore at him, threatened to rip him asunder, and that was ignoring the crushing vice of the reborn Sanbi itself, inexorably grinding the life out of him. He lost most of that air almost instantly, yet even so, he couldn't help but laugh. The three-tailed turtle, reborn as a sea serpent. He should have seen it coming. Kurama would never let him live this down. Channeling chakra to his eyes allowed him to see in the depths, but only just, and he realized his former friend's intentions. He was dragging him down to the depths, either to devour him or suffocate him. Neither were particularly appealing. What would happen if he died again? He didn't want to find out. Even so, he sighed. There could be no hiding this from the world, short of killing Isobu or driving him away, and he couldn't bear to do either. Frankly, he wasn't entirely sure he could defeat him. Not down here in the depths of his domain. Fire was out. Wind next to useless. Earth? Where? Nothing but water down here. Wait, that was it. Water. Gritting his teeth, he stopped struggling in Isobu's grasp, reared back and dragged his hands through it, chakra flaring. It was no bloodline, but it didn't have to be. He'd learned to do incredible things as Nathaniel, all to make up for his weakness, such as this. The temperature plummeted around his fingertips, then his hands he slammed down into the dragon's scales. Not enough! Isobu shuddered, but didn't slow. Cold. Colder! Coldest! A torrent of ice erupted between him and the three tails. The sea dragon snarled, forced to release him as its body spasmed. The moment he did, he swam backward, only to find himself face to with the dragon as it came about with frightful speed. So many teeth. Giant jaws clamped down on him, ready to swallow him whole. His hands swept up, catching two of his teeth before they could. From there, he used his innate chakra to reverse the temperature yet again, trusting in heat rather than cold. The Sanbi recoiled with a pained shriek, unprepared for the boiling water in its mouth nor its own blazing teeth. Whipping him aside, he settled upon the seabed at last and used chakra to tether himself there, grimacing as the oceanic pressure squeezed him further still. Only then did he truly behold the sheer size of his foe. Isobu truly was massive, neither the size he'd been when he was first created, nor quite the length he'd been as a full-grown bijou, but somewhere between the two. Big enough to dwarf him easily, and the ships above besides. He must have hatched ages ago, well before Kurama and the rest. Had he been wandering the seas since then? Growing larger as he fed upon the creatures of the deep pack? Naruto doubled over and clutched at his chest. No more dwelling on the past. This would be a brief battle. Already his lungs were beginning to ache. Betrayer! The Sanbi's very roar rattled the depths. The words were thunder in his head. Your death will not be slow. Yeah, should have seen that coming. Sweeping a hand forth, he conjured a Rasengan into his right hand, only to grimace at the water ruined it. Isobu had ways been the wild one, ever the unpredictable one, some might say mad. It was also one of the only bijou he'd had the pleasure of fighting twice, once trying to seal it with his comrades and again during the Fourth Shinobi War. He'd happily take those times over this. He'd been much stronger back then. Now, this might get a little rough. Exhaling forcefully, he tried to expel some of his remaining oxygen into the water and wrap it around his head as a crude bubble of sorts. It was a good plan, a bold plan, sensible for a shinobi, which he hadn't been for quite some time. Needless to say, he did not succeed. Damn it! Forcing fresh chakra into his lungs bought him precious moments, but not much. Isobu came for him again, jaws gaping wide, to which he twisted aside and slugged him, but the water weakened his punch. What would have been a powerful piston of a pummeling became a weak shove instead, barely redirecting the rampaging beast. He took that split moment of inattention to draw on the natural energy around him. The sea had so much, and channel it inward. His eyes gleamed gold. Gotcha. Isabu lashed at him with his many tails in retaliation, forcing him to waste some of that in dodging aside. He caught one, whirled in the water, and tossed him for all the good it did. The sea serpent rounded on him in an instant, titanic jaws snapping just shy of his leg. He expelled more air to shout at him. "Will you stop?" "No." The Sandbee's voice was thunder incarnate, rattling his mind even in the depths. "You left us, abandoned us. You died and we were scattered to the winds. Now you seek to use us again as weapons of war in your conquest of this world. Never again." He was well prepared for the accusation and quick to counter it, establishing mental link between the two of them lest he drown by wasting what little air he had left. "I didn't abandon you. Neither did your siblings." Lies. And yet there could be no denying the undercurrent of hope in his voice. "Why, you're trying to trick me, seeking to save yourself from a watery grave." "Why would I?" He shrugged a shoulder as stray bubble escaped his lips. "The only way I'm surviving this is with you. It would behoove me, to be honest." Isabu paused at that, rumbling in the deep, truly considering his words. The others truly live, then. "Kurama and Shukaku and Matatabi, yes?" he explained slowly, trying not to provoke him. "I'm sure the others are out there somewhere. I'm trying to find them, bring them all together, just as before." "More sea serpents?" "Not as such. They're winged dragons, unlike you." The sea dragon shuddered and warbled a mournful note. "Then I am alone indeed, trapped in the depths." Pity kicked at his heart. "You're not alone, Isobu. You never have been. I'm sorry I couldn't find you sooner." The water dragon wavered, lashed all three of his tails against the seabed, but didn't direct the shockwave his way. "You only say this because you seek my aid. I could really use your help, yeah." Honesty was the best policy when you were about to drown, he found. "There's a task I need help with, something only you can do. Not Kurama or any of your siblings." Nearly choking on water, he held out a hand. "You're the only one I can count on, Isabu. Please, I need you." "And what task do you need me for?" "Here, let me show you." He swam forward and touched a hand to the dragon's forehead, opening his mind to the great sea beast as he had to only a few others before. "Let there be light. 0.0, 0.0. Without warning, the sea split. Euron saw it all, and heard it too. With a sound like the sundering of the world, the ocean tore itself open. A great, rushing column of water burst skyward, a tidal force so vast that the ships rocked like leaves upon a raging river. From the depths, it rose. The Leviathan returned. But it did not thrash. It did not roar. It obeyed. The beast carried him, not as a prisoner, not as prey, but as a rider. Its monstrous tails no longer lashed in fury, but rolled with the rhythm of the waves. Its terrible bulk, once a harbinger of chaos and destruction, now moved with purpose. And atop its armored spine, Naruto stood. His golden hair was slick with salt, his body steady, his chest rising and falling in deep, measured breaths. The breaths of a man victorious. His eyes, sharp as a blade's edge, burned with a fire untouched by the abyss. He looked over the trembling fleet, over the men who had whispered their prayers, over the gods who had turned their faces away. And then his gaze settled on the silence, on Euron Greyjoy. The Crow's Eye, the man who had seen gods and mocked them, who had called the sea his kingdom, who had laughed at the madness of the deep, he did not laugh now. For the first time in all his cursed days, Euron Greyjoy was silent. His lips curled, not in amusement, but in something close to reverence. For in the heart of the storm, before the might of gods and monsters, he had witnessed something greater than both. Euron Greyjoy, who had seen the drowned gods of his people in fevered dreams, who had dared to claim the sea as his own, smiled. "I believe we have a new ally," he murmured, his grin widening, his voice barely above a whisper. "Or a new god." No man cheered. No voice rose in triumph. The fleet did not roar their approval, did not lift their banners in celebration. They merely watched and remembered. For what they had seen was not for mortal tongues to praise, nor for banners to claim. It was something old, something terrible, something divine. The stark bannermen, clad in storm-soaked grey and steel, stood frozen, their faces blank with shock. They had believed the storm was their doom, that the sea had turned against them, and yet here they stood alive, untouched, spared by the will of a man they did not understand. The Lannister soldiers, hardened men who had marched beneath the Golden Lion, whispered of miracles, of destiny, of a power that did not belong to any man of Westeros. Naruto was their own, but they saw him now with new eyes. Even an Ironborn such as he, a wild man of the sea, Ulgo laughed at gods and feared nothing but the depths themselves, stood in awed silence. For if the abyss had a master, if the blackness of the sea had chosen a herald, then who were they to question it? Upon the beast's back, Naruto exhaled a slow, steady breath. His fingers rested lightly against the dragon's barnacle-crusted shell, feeling the immense thunderous heartbeat beneath. "You are not my beast," he murmured, his voice barely carried by the wind. "You're my friend." So speaking, he pivoted atop the beast and bellowed at the stunned sailors. "With me now! For wrath! For ruin! To the Iron Islands!" The great dragon did not roar with its new master. It did not shake the heavens with its fury nor cast judgment upon those who had doubted. It merely moved, a great and ancient force, its form cutting through the waves. It led the fleet forward, not as a foe, but as a guardian, guiding them toward their destination. From the deck of the Silence, Euron laughed himself hoarse, a rich, dark sound, filled with amusement and something deeper, something almost like joy. "What a fine, fine beast you have there, little lion," he called, his voice carrying over the waves. Naruto only smiled. Not the smirk of a conqueror, nor the sneer of a king. Something simpler, something deeper. His was the smile of a man who had gazed into the abyss and hadn't been found wanting. The Iron Islands awaited, and with their demise, the dawn of a new age. In the distance, the storm broke. 0.0. Far away in the halls of Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister sat in his solar hard at work. The room was quiet, but for the faint scratching of a quill against parchment, the flicker of candlelight dancing over maps and missives of war. His expression was unreadable, his mind occupied with matters of kings and kingdoms, of coin and conquest. But outside, unbeknownst to him, beyond the great golden gates of his stronghold, a shadow approached. A rider, clad in black armor, moved steadily beneath a dragon banner, the standard fluttering in the crisp afternoon wind. Silver hair gleamed beneath the sunlight, bright as a blade. A face that should have been lost to the pages of history was there, real and undeniable, marked by time but unbroken by it. Rhaegar Targaryen had finally arrived. Chapter 29. And so it was, that the lion came to call. But now the cowardly kraken hid in his halls and watched. His towers, full. Tilda a new legend. Come to call, the prince had arrived. Rhaegar Targaryen. Here, at Casterly Rock. Alone with no guards to speak of, no escort whatsoever, requesting an audience with him. Tywin Lannister was not one to shout and rage at the unfairness of the world, but he felt an exception ought to be made given the situation. If he could strangle the little twat, toss him into the sea, let the tides take his body and get away with it, he most certainly would. Hells, he'd actually considered throwing the mountain at the princeling, just to be done with it. Gregor Clegane had never been quite the same since Nathaniel brutalized him, but he still had his uses. He could pop the brat's skull like a grape and save them a great deal of misfortune. Yet he couldn't. Or rather he could, but he mustn't, no matter how gratifying it might feel. Make no mistake, Tywin was tempted to grant Rhaegar the same courtesy Aerys had Jaime, or barring that, arrange an accident for him. A son for a son. The so-called king was practically holding Jaime hostage after all, and while he had gone willingly for the sake of the family, the fact remained that he held him still. Perhaps he ought to take Rhaegar captive, see how his old friend enjoyed losing a son, make him feel that sting. But he didn't dare. He absolutely did not dare. Any harm that befell the prince here would instantly cast suspicion upon not only him, but his family as well and his every other relative beside. The entire Lannister name would be to blame, and Aerys would descend upon them like his namesake. He had already sent a runner back to the keep to warn Cersei and the other maidens of the danger and hopefully have the dragons hidden. But he couldn't afford to leave his post at the gate. Rhaegar may not be his father, thank the gods for small mercies, but he would notice if no one was there to greet his arrival. The girls and the dragons. Rhaegar must not see either. So here he stood, wife at his side, bracing himself for the worst. The preening ponce of a prince had always been difficult for his spies to track. His movements were erratic at best, downright reckless at worst. Wherever he went, he brought disaster in his wake. The young man was absolutely obsessed with the power prophecy. That and finding himself a wife, the better to continue his bloodline. Tywin disdained the former, but he could understand the latter. Sympathize with them even? After all, Rhaegar only had a sickly brother to succeed him in case of disaster, and all knew little Viserys was in decidedly poor health, unlikely to survive to adulthood. With the rest of the realm teetering toward war, the royal succession was more important than ever. It spoke well of Rhaegar that he should look after such things, but it also presented something of a problem, because now he had to come here, to the heart of his power, for purposes unknown. Of all the times for him to arrive, he could not be seen to refuse him either, because the prince would wonder why, and doubtlessly return to his father to complain besides. What in the Seven Hills did the boy want anyway? Was he still trying to find himself a wife? Lyanna had evaded him. The Martell girl had refused him. He found that grimly humorous, which left few noble ladies of the realm available. There were the Tully girls, which would invite the ire of Brandon Stark and Hoster Tully alike. But there was also... Oh dear, so that was his game then. It was a good gambit, he must admit. His timing couldn't be better. With Nathaniel and most of the Lannister and Stark forces at sea besides, Casterly Rock would have been ripe for conquest. Had Rhaegar brought an army? But he hadn't brought an army now, had he? Instead, he brought himself. He wanted Cersei. It would have been an honor once, before all this, to bind his blood with the royal line. The opportunity of a lifetime. The chance to seat a grandchild on the Iron Throne, and through them, control the realm for ages to come, creating a dynasty without end. Now? It was akin to a death sentence. None of these damnable dragons, save perhaps Rhaella, could be trusted. Not a one. He had seen what madness did to the mind of a man, how it turned the once affably eccentric heiress into a cruel, craven creature who burned others for pleasure and jumped at the sight of his own shadow. Joanna must have already figured it out, too, because his wife looked fit to spit. Her once serene countenance was now dark and stormy as the legendary squalls of Storm's End themselves. As a matter of fact, she rather resembled a tempest herself right now. Ah, but here came the prince now, and he must attend. If he failed today, if Cersei were taken or worse, the dragons discovered, the whole of House Lannister would burn. Nathaniel and Nymeria were days away at best, a week at the worst. Should things go south, they would return to find Casterly Rock under siege, or worse, burned to the ground. Nathaniel would be wroth. He had no illusions about what his son would do, and what would follow. He mustn't fail. The very fate of the Seven Kingdoms depended upon him. Was it too late to kill the prince? Clad in a red doublet with matching black trousers, Rhaegar was the very epitome of a Targaryen. All pale hair and bright violet eyes, wearing an easy smile besides. Tywin knew such smiles all too well. They seemed kind and genial on the surface, but they often hid madness beneath. As he looked on, the prince dismounted his dark steed and alighted nimbly before them, grinning from ear to ear. "Good morrow to you, my lord, my lady Tilda." He sketched a bow to them despite his status. "I wish I could have brought Sir Jaime with me, but father refuses to let him leave the keep these days." "You honour us," Joanna smiled demurely, but it didn't reach her eyes. "But here's a Kingsguard, my prince." "Ah, but I am the prince." He winked their way. "If I say he can bend his vows a little, he should be allowed to visit his family." Joanna tensed beside Tywin, gripping his hand tight. Was that a threat? Or was the boy simply daft? Likely the latter. Rhaegar was not vicious like his father, but he wasn't right in the head. All the more reason not to let this insipid twit ascend the Iron Throne. Westeros was barely surviving the reign of the Mad King. It would not endure that of a stupid son and his equally idiotic descendants. No, he didn't trust him for a moment, not with his daughter, not with anyone. He did not hate this silly fool. Fools like him were often what made the realm go round. But neither could he allow him to have his way. To business, then. Tywin hid his grimace behind an impassive mask and forced himself to begin. My prince, we weren't expecting you. To what do we owe the visit?" Rhaegar didn't realise the danger. His smile was jovial, almost merry even. "I had hoped to pay call upon your daughter. Joanna inhaled reflexively, her suspicions confirmed. And so it began. 0.0. You must hide. Liana nearly fell out of bed as Elia Martel came crashing into her room in a swirl of golden silk, the act of which startled her poor pup. Little Shadow had never been one for loud noises. He was a direwolf at heart, and he barked loudly as the Dornish woman gathered her up and dragged her across the room. He didn't cease until Liana swept him up into her arms, and even then he kept whining until she stroked his ears. Whispering sweet nothings seemed to calm him somewhat, but only just. It did nothing at all for her own racing heart. Hide! Elia bundled her into an empty wardrobe. We cannot be seen here. She tried to resist only to find herself overpowered. Why? Oberyn's sister rounded on her, eyes wild and tea-bared. Rhaegar Targaryen has come. 4 little words, and yet they turned her very blood to ice. Her blood ran cold. The prince? Here? Has he come for us, no? Her sister-in-arms shook her head and began tapping at the back of the wardrobe for reasons she didn't understand. I do not believe so, else he would have brought an army. He is here to court Cersei, I suspect. We should have anticipated this. Liana scarcely heard the words. Her ears were ringing. The world was swimming around her. Nathaniel had promised to protect her from Rhaegar. But her love wasn't here, he was a world away. Fear kicked furiously at her breast. If it came to that, then... She gripped the knife she kept at her belt. No dragon shall grow in my belly, nor mine. Elia pried her hands away from the dagger, held them, and kissed her knuckles for good measure. I have seen where that future leads and want no part of it. Liana paused, briefly baffled. Seen the future? But that implied, aha! Crowing in triumph, the Martell finally found what she was looking for and pressed something within the wardrobe almost immediately. The back of it slid away, revealing a dark passage therein. Liana hesitated at the sight of it, clutching Little Shadow close to her chest. The direwolf puppy whined, sensing her distress. Elia cared for none of it and shoved them both forward with a snarl. Move! Liana did so, albeit reluctantly, glancing about herself with mild trepidation. What is this place? A secret passage. Elia lifted her skirts and stepped in after her, painstakingly sealing the passage behind her as she went. Nathaniel told me of it. We shall be safe in here. Oberyn awaits us on the other side. But what of Cersei? The princess grimaced and pushed her along. She must find a way to deny Rhaegar without rousing his wrath. Easier said than done where princes were concerned. And if she doesn't? The silence was her answer. In it, another awful thought occurred. What about the dragons? They are clever creatures. They must fend for themselves. 0.0. Cersei raced down the steps to the stone garden, taking them 2 at a time in her haste. Tyrion stumbled after her, tripping over himself as he tried to follow. Sister! He called out after her. Wait! She couldn't. She didn't have time to coddle him right now. If they were found out, now everything would be undone. She had mere moments. Minutes at best, even then it might not be enough. Someone must warn them. Now, by luck or chance, the dragons weren't hard to find. She found them lounging in the weirwood. Red one was sunning himself against the rocks, the brown beast was playing in the sandy dirt, while the blue one, hers, had perched herself in the weirwood tree and reclined there like some sort of queen. Dragons really were remarkable creatures, but whereas once their majesty might have slowed her, now she hadn't the time for it. Panic gave her legs wings of their own, and lifting her skirts, she hastened their way. Each of them heard her coming, for they looked up as one. Cersei flailed her arms at the lot of them. No time for pleasantries here. Hide yourselves! She hoped they understood her. Someone is coming to take you away! The red dragon, Kurama, drew himself up with a sonorous hiss, 9 scaled tails lashing at the ground. He was the largest by far, and his crimson slits regarded her with eerie intelligence. A plume of smoke escaped his nostrils as he snorted once, perhaps in amusement, and lumbered towards her. She almost shrank back at the sight of him. The brown dragon, Shukaku, scoffed and ignored her outright, content to frolic as it pleased until Kurama lashed it with his tails. The smaller dragon flopped on its back with an outraged squawk, but it was ultimately the blue dragon. Matatabi raised her long neck to regard her imperiously. Oh-ho! Her voice was rich like the purest of honey, mismatching eyes burning like the sun and moon alike. Much has changed since we last met, little lion. 'Twould seem congratulations are in order. Gods be good, but she understood her. Circe nearly fainted dead away from sheer shock. Nathaniel must have done something to her during their last dream together, because she found she could understand her perfectly. Not so the other two. Not yet, but she'd take what she could get. Under any other circumstance, she would have marvelled at it. But she hadn't the time. She explained herself quickly, hurriedly as best she could. The dragons listened intently. Once her tale was done, Kurama inhaled sharply, the sound akin to fire crackling over paper. Matatabi echoed it, albeit far more quietly. Rest assured, the pretender will not touch us. Go, little lion, and gird yourself well against this so-called prince. We shall hide ourselves away from him. How? They couldn't fly out the cavern. They'd be seen by the people of Casterly Rock and Lannisport besides. To say nothing of the prince himself, if he was still without rather than within the castle proper. Clinging to the ceiling might be an option for Shukaku and Matatabi, until someone looked up, and besides, Kurama was much too large for that. Yet the blue dragon granted Shukaku a most intent glower, smug like a cat. We have our ways. Remarkably, the little bastard Drew chirped twice and himself upright on all fours, preening. Matatabi rolled her eyes. He says, "Witness me, and tell Naruto of his greatness." Circe felt her brow furrow. What does he mean by that? The womb! She didn't have time to ask because the soil suddenly erupted into sand. 0.0, 0.0. At long last, it was his time to shine. Shukaku looked to the sandy floor of the cavern, considering it with a gimlet eye. Tapping it with a claw, he considered the soil's composition. It wasn't the best, but he'd been working at it for some time now. It would do. An idea dawned. It wasn't a good one, was far from his best, really, yet it was all he had. Besides, this was a chance to show off before the female. Who would then tell Naruto of his noble deeds here today, thereby elevating him much further in his eyes than these two lackwits? Ergo wealth, fame, power, glory. Not wasting that. His wings might be small and stunted still, but his claws were long and sharp. He still held command of the sands, weakened though he was. So he did what he did best. He started digging. It took time, longer than he would have liked given his size, but even in this reduced form, he was still Shukaku, the one-tailed raccoon. Lord of the Sands. The sandy soil was his domain, and it bent to his will now just as it had in the days of old. In less than 3 minutes, he'd made a burrow. He ushered his larger sibling into his crudely crafted hole in the earth, paused just long enough to form a pocket to breathe with an air bullet, and forced the sandy soil to swirl upward, concealing his work. Crowing proudly at Circe, he dove in after them with a triumphant cry and sealed it behind him. Witness me, Tilda. It wouldn't last forever. Dragons they might now be, but they still had to breathe. He slammed the crude lid shut behind them and prayed for a miracle. D.0, 0.0. Just like that, Circe found herself alone. She took a deep breath to fortify herself, spun on her heel, and marched back up the steps by which she'd come. From there, she found poor Tyrion sitting where she'd left him, still somewhat stunned from his fall. Taking pity upon her baby brother, she promptly swept the not dwarf up into her arms and continued her ascent. From there, she stalked up the steps to meet Rhaegar, knowing full well what he intended for her. He wanted to spirit her away from here, take her and break her and make her his queen. A lifetime ago, she would have jumped at such an opportunity. No longer. This was not her destiny. If fate said otherwise, she would break its jaw. 0.0, 0.0. The Iron Islands heaved with chaos. Under normal circumstances, Balon Greyjoy rather enjoyed chaos. Chaos was opportunity. Some might even call it a ladder. He had used it to climb quite high these past few months, moving from the firstborn son of Quellon Greyjoy to the Lord Reaper of Pike itself. He had paid the iron price and used it to elevate himself well beyond his station in record time. He had the tacit if silent support of the crown. He was to take the West and ravage all in his path. Ruin the Lannisters, plunder them dry. The dragon would not interfere. So had been the plan. Until the storm came. It swept up out of the west without warning, bringing doom in its wake. Now his men were deserting in droves, fleeing in the face of this unnatural weather, this terrible fog that clung to everyone and everything. A man could scarcely see a foot before his face, let alone sail. One by one, the Isles had gone quiet these last few days, until only the seat of his power remained. Ravens were sent, but did not return. This was not what he'd been promised. There was no sign of the grand victory he had been assured. With father out the way, it should have been easy. Why then? Why wasn't it easy? Ironborn did not sow. We do not sow. That was a lie. They had sown the wind and now reaped the whirlwind. But it was not over while he yet drew breath. He would not surrender the sea-stone chair to these usurpers, any more than he would Lordsport nor the rest of the Isle. If they wished to take it from him, they must pay the iron price, and he was determined to reap a grim toll. Yet despite the fog, there were no ships on the horizon, only a storm. The drowned god favoured him still, it seemed. What manner of Ironborn loses his wits in a storm? Not him. He was no fool like Euron. He would endure this storm, outlast the lion and the dragon both, and then, oh yes, then, he would take what he was owed. Balon had grand ambitions. The realm was fractured, distracted. War was coming. The Ironborn thrived in war, and he would have it all. A sudden peal of thunder drew his attention, forcing him away from his glorious grandeur. Without warning, the fog lifted and the sea shifted around the Iron Islands. He heard them then. Drums in the deep, across the water. Saw the ships, so very many, many with sails he recognised. Traitors! Each belting out a singular cadence with their instruments of war. Be they drums, or something else, something far worse? Regardless, he heard it all the same. Thud, thud, thud. Men were chanting alongside that noise, a bone-chilling cadence that only grew louder with each passing moment. That terrible stomping rhythm beckoned something from the deep. And then, quite suddenly, splash. The sea split and Balon Greyjoy looked up as a mighty serpentine shadow fell over him. Someone screamed down below the towers. He was never sure who, but he suddenly rather felt like joining them. Because there, on the horizon, he saw something before the Shiles. And there, rising from the deep like the drowned god himself, was death from the depths, not just his death. The death of all Ironborn upon Pike and the Iron Islands as a whole. Doom brought by the waves. A titanic sea serpent rose from the depths, long as his many towers were tall. It wasn't even the full bulk of the beast. He could glimpse still more lurking under the water. It was the biggest creature he'd ever seen. Its lone eye, larger than a man, was tall. And there, sitting atop its head, riding the creature, was a man. No, not merely a man. Blonde hair! Bright eyes! He screamed at him, nearly incoherent with rage. Lannister! Impossibly, he was heard. Greyjoy! Nathaniel's voice boomed like thunder, rattling the very heavens. Your end has come. We bring the destruction of Pike. At his command, the savage sea serpent looked to the skies and roared. It was an awful sound, just the sort a beast from the deep might make, so sonorous that Balon found himself, momentarily deafened by it, left clutching at his bloody ears. High above, the heavens darkened yet further. An already overcast sky became darker still as rain began to fall with renewed ferocity. Slowly at first, then with gusto as the wind picked up. Lightning lanced out at the top of a tower, obliterating it with an almighty crack. One of his sons died in that instant, and in that instant, Balon finally understood. This beast had summoned the storm. In an instant, the very sea turned against the Isle of Pike, spawning cyclones and waterspouts, maelstroms, every horror imaginable, all brought to bear upon the land. The very sight of it stole the strength from his veins. The Iron Islands had weathered many a storm before and hopefully would since, but none like this. It was as though the very wrath of the drowned god made manifest. And he was mightily displeased with them for their many failures. Or perhaps there had never been a drowned god at all. Perhaps he was the fool. The sea dragon reared back and spat. With it, a spout of water burst forth from the beast's maw to barrel towards the seat of Balon's power. No, he realised, not quite a spout. Westeros lacked the word for it. The elemental nations did not. It was not an arrow of water, but something far worse. A water bullet. The blast knew no mercy. It struck the base of the tower he occupied. Balon's world teetered as everything went sideways. His head struck something, darkness obliterated his vision. Chapter 30, Shu. Do you fear death, my lord? Asked the laughing lion of the cowardly kraken, he who refused to face him in battle. Do you fear that dark abyss? All your deeds laid bare, all your sins punished? The cowardly kraken quivered in his keep, hiding in the deep. "I fear nothing and no one. My walls are tall, my halls are vast. You and your men shall never pass." "So be it," said the laughing Lion of Lannister. "If these Ironborn are so fond of their drowned god, we'll give them a drowning they'll never forget. Drown them in their sorrow and fears. Let them choke on their blood and tears. Make them bleed till they run out of years. They'll give up their honour and faith. Live up their lives like the wraiths. Die in the blood where they bathe. We will bid each of them goodbye." Tilda, an excerpt from the Dirge of the Greyjoys, as sung by a rather infamous bard. Drown your sorrow. Reality lurched forward once more. Balon Greyjoy dearly wished it hadn't. Sleep had been painless, peaceful, preferable even. One could not be harmed in one's dreams after. Slumber was silent, devoid of danger. The waking world was not. Awakening brought with it complete, utter agony. The mounting realization all was not well, and when he awakened his body protested viscerally. Ears ringing, eyes stinging, he could scarcely hear a thing. Such was the muffled state of his world, blood on his tongue from a cracked skull and a broken nose besides. These were but a handful of the injuries he noticed upon opening his eyes. Against all odds, he had survived the balcony's collapse when his tower crumbled, but only just. Dust and bits of broken masonry coated his battered body like a burial shroud. Yet by some miracle, perhaps the drowned god's own grace, he yet lived to see another sunrise. It was not a joy. Far from it, he very much wished he were dead. His right arm hung limp at his side, badly broken, and his left leg lay twisted horribly beneath him, reducing his gait to a slow, shuffling walk. Yet the pain didn't impede him overmuch. Such was the shock he was even now suffering from. He hadn't been out for very long. Evidently it was long enough for chaos to take the world. Shards of light danced before his vision as he limped forward, fleeting moths of brilliance in the gloom gradually resolving into shambling shadows, adopting the shape of men. Some fled, others were chased. Enemies. In an instant, Balon remembered what was happening. Dazed though he might be, he still had his sword, and he drew it from his sheath with his good hand in a clumsy motion as he staggered forward. The fog might be gone, but the fog of war had fallen about Pike instead, dragging the rest of the Iron Islands with them. Soldiers were landing, disembarking from the boats below, like a horde of frenzied ants. Some were scaling the cliffs using strange devices he didn't recognize. Others wielded great swords of whose make he didn't recognize. Damnable Northmen. And still more wore Lannister armor, cutting down everyone in sight. Worse, there were Manderly's Malisters among them. Bah! Still more wore familiar armor and brandished known crests as they cut down the brave men of Pike. Blacktide, Botley, Harlaw, Merlin and Spar. Good brother. Willful traitors all. Small wonder the other islands had gone silent. They had been beaten, beset, bludgeoned until they broke. Because there, looming above them all, wreaking havoc, spitting great geysers of water to splinter stone and flay flesh, the sea serpent, no, the Leviathan. Balon wasn't sure why he called it such, only that he did, the name etched into the very forefront of his mind. It had yet to leave the sea. Frankly, he wasn't sure it could. But it didn't have to, because it was hard at work in its own way. Surging and slamming and smashing through the remaining ships of the Greyjoy fleet with the reckless abandon, it targeted the commanders, almost as though it knew exactly where they were. Those that fell into the sea were summarily devoured, or worse, sank in their armor and drowned, never to rise again. Euron might have considered that a blessing once, to go with the drowned god and feast in his sunken halls. Now he no longer knew what he believed, for a beast of the deep was laying waste to his isle. What could possibly harm such a creature? The answer was obvious. Nothing. Had the Lannister wished it, he could have ended this in an instant. Commanded his serpentine steed to blast all of Pike's towers into the sea and let the tides sort them out. But he didn't. Instead, he drew it out, eradicating them all one by one, sparing none. He was thorough. How had he arrayed so many allies against him? Had he known they would lash out at Lannisport? Was this all part of his plan? Would this be the end of the Greyjoys? No, he couldn't have planned this. Not the involvement of Aerys, not his backers. It just wasn't possible. The boy couldn't have possibly seen this far ahead. It wasn't possible. It could not be. Balon! A voice pierced the din of war and his thoughts alike to fill his still ringing ears. Face me! With those words, his ears popped and, unfortunately, he could hear again. The broken kraken stumbled to the side and beheld his traitor brother storming his way. Euron recognized him too, for his face lit with feral triumph. He waded forward, axe in one hand, sword in another, each already slick with blood fixed on yet more. An Ironborn tried to bar his path and was summarily cut down for their efforts, followed by two more. Balon stumbled back, warding his blade before his face with a trembling arm. Yet Euron made no move to take it. He paused a ways away, grinning. "Hello, brother." Balon spat at him. Disgrace of an Ironborn. His younger sibling preened. And yet here I stand on the winning side. "Bah! What did the lion promise you? Gold? Iron? Ships? Freedom?" His upper lip curled in distaste. "You'll kill me for that, then." He wasn't prepared for his smile. "No, brother. I won't be the one to kill you. I simply wanted to watch." Balon bristled. Watch what? A flicker of movement from the right was his only warning. He tried to turn, but even then it was too late. Something struck his sword arm aside, forcing the blade high. Even then he managed to parry another blow before his arm was shunted aside in its entirety, leaving him wide open. In that instant, he glimpsed familiar blonde hair, those bright eyes, that insufferable smile, and knew his killer. Just as he knew what was coming next, what would inevitably come, as was his wont. Sure enough, a blade bit into his belly, bringing him low down to his knees. The pain was unlike anything he'd ever known. The sword sliced through his stomach and emerged out his back, piercing him in a single thrust of the blood-spattered steel. No, wait. The blade itself was red. He knew this sword, knew it well. 'Twas no mere weapon, but Red Rain. A Valyrian steel sword, treasure of House Drum, vassal house pledged to the Greyjoys. Or so they had been. His eyes bulged in bitter realization as he put two and two together. He'd not seen the banners of House Drum in the battle, neither on his side nor the Lannister. The whelp must have broken them badly to take their prize from them. Perhaps they too had been eradicated, as House Greyjoy soon would be. But this wasn't over. Did he truly think things would end with the death of the Kraken? Fool! Lannister! Blood bubbled up past his lips, frothing out his last breath. Greyjoy. It was both greeting and a goodbye wrapped in one. This is only the beginning. You will never know peace. Those bright, blazing eyes narrowed upon him. He did not respond, did not brag of his prize. His arm simply arced back, swung down now. Steel sang. Balon felt no pain. A head flew through the air. After all this, death was a mercy. 0.0, 0.0. Victarion wasn't stupid. Most might think he was, but he wasn't. Most might think he was, but he wasn't. He knew when the wind was poor and the tides were turning. And right now, they were turning against Pike. This was the end of the Greyjoys. Euron might live a little while longer, but the lion would kill him eventually too. Didn't matter to him, not really. This only ended one way, with him dying to steal, or that fucking sea dragon. Victarion wasn't stupid, but he was no coward either. He slammed on his helmet, took up his axe and shield, and went to die in the defense. He cut down Northmen and Lannisters alike, bellowing challenges as he went, demanding a true fight, a worthy foe, until finally, he found one. There, a massive man as large as he was tall, ripping apart Greyjoys like they were so much meat. He recognized the helm. Sandor Clegane. The Hound. A grin split his face beneath his kraken helm. This would be a good death. Something struck his side before he could meet him. Victarion tumbled into blackness. Fate would decide if he awoke. 0.0, 0.0. Nymeria knew her task. Joanna had been paramount. This was to be Nathaniel's Castamere. No survivors. No means by which the Greyjoys might tally. Pyle would be purged. An example must be made. Let her heart be the one stained with this sin. Let she be the one to bloody her hands dip so that Nathaniel might remain clean and pure. And if he learned of this, if he came to hate her for it, then so be it. That too was what it meant to love someone. You stood by their side through thick and thin, helped shoulder their burdens with them. Even if they didn't ask you to. She closed her heart to the cries of the battlefield, donned one of her faces, and went to work. All Greyjoys must die. 0.0, 0.0. Naruto had seen tailed beasts wreak havoc in battle before. Yet there was something about naval warfare that made it all seem oddly impersonal. From his reclaimed perch atop Isabu, he had watched the enemy drown, one by one. They would sing songs of this, twist his deeds into legend. They would spend 3 days purging Pike. 0.0. The sea was red. 3 days had passed since the storming of the Isle, yet the waters still lapped at the jagged shore like a dog at the bone, tinged the colour of rust and old wounds. Salt hung heavy in the air, but it was not alone. Smoke rode beside it, and something fouler still, the iron stench of blood, clotted thick on the rocks and slicked through the tide pools. The gulls had come by the hundreds, their cries sharp as broken glass, wheeling and shrieking as they picked at swollen corpses in the surf. Carrion kings, they feasted freely. Pike burned still, not with the wild fury of fire freshly loosed, but with the low, persistent smoulder of a ruin too proud to die quickly. Stone blackened, timber wept soot, and smoke curled from ancient halls where once kings had plotted with salt in their veins and iron in their hearts. Now only ghosts remained, ghosts and the ash of 1,000 drowned oaths. The Greyjoys were no more. Naruto stood atop the cliff's edge, the wind dragging at the gold-threaded hem of his cloak, setting it to flapping like a war banner left too long in the rain. He did not shiver. The cold of the sea was nothing compared to the chill that clutched his bones. His hands were clenched at his sides, not from weather but from memory. Ghosts clung to his fingers, their touch slick and red. He had not wanted this. Gods, he had not asked for this. Yet it was done. One death was simple, clean. A man can be forgiven a single death, even a necessary one. But this had been no execution. This had been butchery, drawn out across 3 long days and longer nights, each dawn more smoke-choked than the last. The Ironborn had fought as they had lived wild and without mercy. They called themselves reavers, raiders, sons of the sea. And they had died as such, shrieking like beasts when the Leviathan rose from the deep and shattered their ships like kindling. Some leapt willingly into the black waves rather than face the serpent's fury. Others met his soldiers on the black beaches, axes in hand, prayers to the drowned god bubbling from split lips. Isabu's roar had drowned out their war cries, but not their defiance. Victarion Greyjoy had been lucky in that regard. Clegane had found his fallen body and dragged him to the cells out of pity. He might live, once they'd finished wringing information out of it. The rest were not so fortunate. There was no glory in it, not when keeps fell with children still locked within, not when widows tore their hair and wailed as steel found their bellies, not when the breakers ran slick with the blood of babes. Naruto closed his eyes. He could still hear them, not the dying but the ones left alive. The sobbing, the screaming, the silence after. That was the worst. The silence. The sea serpent had brought them victory, yes, but victory wore a crown of bone and sat upon a throne of corpses. Is this justice? He asked the wind. The wind did not answer. Behind him, the new banners of his fleet whipped in the gale, red spirals like eyes watching from another world. His men stood quiet and grim, swords sheathed, their armour caked with soot and spray. Even the beasts were hushed. The wolves refused to howl. The serpent stirred not. The victory feast had soured before it could begin. Somewhere far below, the last tower of Pike gave a groan and collapsed into the sea with a sound akin to that of a dying god. Naruto watched it fall. Let it drown, he thought. Let it all drown. But the ghosts did not drown. They never did. This was your Castamere. Nymeria's voice drifted to him, soft as sea mist, as she emerged from the surf like something born of it. Her black boots left no mark on the blood-slick stones. She was soaked to the waist, her robes clinging like second skin, hair plastered in pale ropes across her sharp cheeks and sun-darkened brow. She smiled, but there was no joy in it, only weariness, brittle and sharp as a dulled blade. Behind her, Isabu loomed in the shallows. Foam clung to his carapace. His great eye blinked slowly, mournfully. A low trill escaped his maw as Nymeria passed beneath him, and she reached up to pat his curling horn. The beast hummed like a forge left to cool deep, trembling, almost sad. Naruto did not turn. He did not need to. He could feel her. The blood on her skin, though the waves had rinsed it clean. It clung in the air, thick as oil, in the weight of her steps and the scent beneath the salt. "You did it, then," he said. "I did." "How many?" Nymeria paused. Her hands were folded now, delicate, almost reverent. "All." He turned, slowly. His face was stone. "All?" he repeated. She met his gaze, eyes dark as storm glass. All? The women, the babes, the bastards, the daughters, the wives, all Greyjoys, from the iron seat to the youngest cradle. A long breath escaped him. The wind caught it and flung it out to sea. Nymeria looked away first. The salt wives I freed, she added after a moment. The thralls too. I am not a monster. No, his voice was flat, distant. You're my shadow. Yes, she said, and in her mouth it was not agreement, but a pronouncement. And this is the price of peace. You wanted them gone. They are gone. No rebellion. No retreat. No revenge. The sea is silent, and the kraken sleeps. The wind tugged at his cloak again, snapping it like a banner over a field gone to rot. He looked out over the remains of Pike. The embers were fewer now, the gulls quieter. Smoke curled in lazy spirals toward the greying sky. The dead did not scream, but they lingered. And what if I had told you to spare them? He asked, soft now, so soft the sea itself strained to hear. Nymeria stepped closer, her boots crunching over the remains of a rusted helm, half sunken in the sand. She stopped an arm's length from him. You didn't. Her voice held no anger, no triumph, just truth. Naruto's eyes drifted to her hands, pale, scarred, steady. Hands that had once braided a child's hair. Hands that had slit a babe's throat this very week. You would have done it, though, he said. Not a question. Nymeria's brow creased faintly. I would have argued. He looked back toward the sea. And if I'd insisted? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. There were truths even shadows would not speak aloud. Naruto exhaled through his nose, slow and trembling. The blood is on both our hands. No, she said. The blood is in the water. A gull shrieked overhead. Isabu stirred behind them, his tail coiling like a leviathan's whisper. Somewhere far off, a horn sounded. A mournful thing, low and long, echoing from a ship hidden in the mist. A raven will go to Casterly Rock, Nymeria said after a long silence. Your father will want to know. Naruto nodded. And the wolf. She smiled again, thinner now. Lord Rickard will understand. That, he didn't doubt. He'd seen the man fighting in the thick of things, before the butchery. Will he forgive? Not likely. Her eyes gleamed like wet stone. But he'll remember. 0.0. 0.0. The fighting had ended, but the dying continued. Sailors dragged bloated bodies from shattered hulls, coughing from smoke and salt both. Looters picked through ironborn halls, taking more than just gold-taking retribution. Killing. Naruto had ordered restraint. Nymeria had offered a different command. Leave none that might seek vengeance. Joanna's words, cold and clear. This had not been war. It had been extermination. The deed was done. 0.0. 0.0. Beneath the burning sky, Naruto descended toward the tide. He waded through the water until it kissed his thighs, boots swallowed by the sea. Isabu shifted, rumbling softly as he approached. The Leviathan's great red eye blinked slowly. Nymeria stood beside him again, quiet now, face turned to the waves. He reached up and placed a hand on Isabu's shell. The beast cooed. Naruto blew out a sigh. Does it ever end? No, Nymeria said. But it changes. You carry it differently. He fell silent. Then, slowly, he waded deeper into the water until he was shoulder deep. There he stood with his back to the shore, to the ruin, to the men piling corpses like driftwood. He knew he should feel wretched, terrible, awful, and he did, yet he also felt relief, glad that the butchery was over. The Greyjoys would never threaten the Lannisters, or anyone else, ever again. He would remember this, the wailing and the weeping, the tears of the defeated broken by his army, yet his tears never came. He supposed that was a good thing. He might not cry, but he still felt wretched, which meant he still had a heart somewhere to feel them. He stood vigil nevertheless, such was his duty as the victor, to watch. The sea swallowed the corpses one by one. 0.0. 0.0. 3 days. 3 goddamned days. 3 days, and the bastard was still here. Cersei was ready to tear her hair out. Didn't this posh prick of a prince realize he was wearing out his welcome? Leave already! Rhaegar Targaryen most assuredly did not leave. Instead, he sang to her, recited poetry, offered her treats as though she were a bird in a cage. In her own home. Cersei Lannister stared at the intricate tiles of her mother's solar as though they might sprout fangs and speak. She had paced this same circle near 100 times. Her skin crawled from the false honeyed words, the endless compliments, the lingering stares. He was beautiful, certainly. A harpist with silver gold hair and melancholy eyes. A prince of songs and sad stories. A prince with no bloody sense of boundaries. Every morning he came, bringing gifts, flowers, books, even a cage of doves once. And every night he stayed too long, speaking of prophecy and destiny and the dragon's 3 heads. She might have endured that. Might. But, just yesterday, he had asked her to sing. Sing. Cersei had forced the words out, hating how they sounded. I shall entertain your offer. I need time to think. Alone. He'd pouted a little at that. But I've only just arrived. Might I have proof of your intentions? He seemed kind enough, but she'd known kind men before. He was a prince. The prince. And he was not at all accustomed to being told no. She was a lioness of the West. She would not be a bird in a cage. Mother and father were of no help at all. They could not force him away any more than she could. Such would be seen as a grave offence. Father was probably itching to kill the prince, but he couldn't do that either. For if any harm befell him, word would reach the king, and then his wrath would fall upon them. So she smiled. So she sang. So she endured. Now he was here again, seated across from her with that same gentle, maddening smile. In his lap rested an ornate satchel. I have brought something, he said. Cersei's mouth twitched. Unless it's a sword through your gut, I doubt I'll care. He chuckled. Ever the lioness. No, not a sword. With theatrical care, he drew the satchel open and removed a black stone. It gleamed dully in the torchlight, veins of crimson pulsing faintly beneath its smooth surface. A dragon egg, her breath caught. No, why did he have one? Where did you get that? Her voice was sharper than a dagger's kiss. Rhaegar beamed. In the catacombs beneath Dragonstone. I felt it calling to me. Her throat closed. Did you try to hatch it? Not yet, he said. But I can feel it. The fire. It stirs. Panic bloomed within her, and her temper so thinly restrained slipped its leash. Cersei stood so suddenly her chair screeched across the stone. You utter fool. Do you know what you've done? He blinked, caught off guard. You brought it here. In the keep. Have you no sense? No understanding? I thought it would please you. He looked genuinely wounded. Cersei pressed her fingers to her temple. Oh, 7 preserve me. You dolt. A dragon egg? Yes, she hissed. A thing of power. A thing that could bring the whole realm to ruin if it hatches. Do you even know how to control it? What it might be? You don't. She seized the egg and flung it into the hearth with a snarl. Flames leapt higher, dancing madly around it. Rhaegar reached for it. No, leave it, she snapped. Touch it and I swear I'll carve the harp from your bloody back. His mouth opened. Closed. Leave, she growled. But get out. The prince hesitated one moment longer. Then, with a heavy heart, he bowed and left her chambers, the dragon egg smouldering behind him in the hearth. 0.0. 0.0. Cersei waited until the door clicked shut. Then she staggered back, hand braced against the mantel. Her heart thundered in her chest. An egg. If that contained what she thought it did. Nathaniel's wrath would be great. She would need to speak to mother and father. Gods, but she had to warn Nathaniel before it was too late. She had to, she must, lest he return and see him here. Nathaniel was going to murder Rhaegar Targaryen. 0.0. 0.0. News of a different sort shocked the realm come next morning, delivered by way of dark-winged ravens. Little Prince Viserys Targaryen, not Rhaegar, had perished in the dead of night, poisoned by the king's enemies.